You're on.
Okay, this is a meeting of the West Newbury Select Board. It's 7:07 on May 24th. Good evening, everybody. So there are just two of the Select Board members here at the moment. David Archibald had to leave. Hopefully he'll be back shortly. For opening announcements, so the meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation, and that would be, it's a Zoom meeting. The meeting ID is 980-4962-7957 with a passcode of 702682, or dial in by phone at 646-558-8656. To start out, they're currently, well, actually, that's right, Karen Tyler would like to speak. So just to, I guess, for starters, Karen, I think you had something you wanted to speak about. You are our veterans agent?
That's correct. Yep. So hi, everyone. I just wanted to pop in and tell you an exciting thing about that's going to be happening. Like you said, my name's Karen Tyler. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for West Newbury, and I have put together a veteran lunch to celebrate July 4th. And so what it is we're going to have, it's going to be for the towns of West Newbury, Newbury, and Georgetown. We've got a generous donation from the Newbury Port Bank, who's supported us in the past in different things. And this summer, I'd like to celebrate 4th of July with doing a lunch for those three towns. And so I'm putting together, I sent out the flyer, and I'm hoping that you guys can share it with, everybody else in West Newbury. So that way, the more people who hear about it, hopefully the more people will get engaged. And I also want for people to know, hey, we have a veteran service office, and this is who we go to. And so that way it's just connecting veterans with the services also. So this luncheon is going to take place on July 3rd. We are asking that people respond by June 24th, so 1 month from today, to let us know to register for the meal, and we will either have it picked up or we can deliver it. So it's whatever people feel comfortable with. And so the pickup is going to be in Plum Island, but like I said, when they call to RSVP, we'll have that conversation and figure out what works best for them. I have volunteers and on board that when it comes time, if we need to make deliveries, we have people that are willing to do that. If there's other people that want to volunteer, they can contact my office, and we'll be making a list of volunteers if they want to do deliveries.
Great. Karen, you said you had a flyer for that. Can you also provide that to us in electronic form?
Yes, I can. Yep. So I'll send it out to everyone. I also spoke with Jenny. She said that she's going to be putting it on all social media and all those other outlets. I also encourage you all that if you belong to any other, Facebook groups or, the different boards and committees, if you could also let them know, because they'll spread it out even further. So let's just have this go out, have it passed around, get as many people involved as we can.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
And if you guys ever need anything, just certainly call the office and we'll get it taken care of.
Great.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a good night.
Good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so other public service announcements. I guess for starters, there's a number of different volunteer opportunities for anybody who would like to contribute to the to our community. There's a position on the finance committee. Actually, I think there are a couple of positions on the finance committee that or will be.
There's one right now. We would love for everyone to be reappointed, but in case there's any who choose not to, there might be more than one.
Okay, and on the Concom, I think there will be two.
Yep.
Or there is one right now, and there will be two.
Correct.
Council on Aging, I'm not sure how many positions are open. Board of Library Trustees, one position. And they're all, you're responsible for them all.
Not all of them. Some of them.
The Energy and Sustainability Committee, there's one open position. The Open Space Committee, there are open positions. Cable Advisory Committee, Climate Change Resiliency Committee, the Cultural Council, the Historic District Commission. The Planning Board has an associate member position open, and that's actually a great opportunity if you are interested potentially in becoming a full member at some point in the future. Good way to get your feet wet. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals has 2 associate member positions open as well. So this list is pretty up to date, but things change. They're in flux all the time. So give it a thought, please. Looks like the next. I don't know where the public service thing.
Request for appointment of new reserve officer, George Lynott, and we have Chief Durand. Chief, do you want to speak to that request?
Sure.
We also have the candidate is present.
Yep, I'd like to have George appointed. He was recommended by Manny Torero. He's worked for the Mass Department of Youth Services as a juvenile parole officer for 14 years, and he's completed all the necessary training to become a reserve officer in the state, and he's completed the department hiring process.
How are you doing, George?
Good, thank you.
You live in Methuen currently, is that right? Is that what I read?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. How you like West Newbury?
I love it. I'm just getting to know it, and so far so good.
Great. Good. Do you have anything in particular that you care to say to introduce yourself?
Like the chief said, my name is George Lynott, 42 years old. Currently work for the juvenile parole office in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Been doing that for 14 years. Graduated the academy for reserve police 2 years ago. I've been doing auxiliary police with Haverhill for the past 2 years, and I'm excited to move up as a reserve officer.
Great. Good. Good. Well, we have a need, and you're available. That's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So did you have anything else you wanted?
I'm just curious, the position you have now, is it part-time or full-time?
It's full time. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 10 to 6, or 11 to 7. I have flexible hours.
I see. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I would move to appoint George Lynott as, did I pronounce that right, George? Is it Lynott or Lynott?
Lynott.
Lynott, okay. Thanks. So I've moved to appoint George Lynott as a reserve officer for the West Newbury Police Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or any discussion?
No.
We already had that. All in favor?
Aye. Welcome.
Great. Thank you,
Great.
George. Yeah,
Okay,
welcome on board.
So George, the chief can put you in touch with Mike McCarron. He's our town clerk, and he's on the call right now as well. Mike can get you sworn in and then you'll be all set to go, and we can get you the pre-employment paperwork, which comes out of my office, out of the finance office. So, but the chief can tell you all about that.
Yeah,
All
well,
right, great. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I just didn't see any time period associated with it.
Well, Angus will ask that. We didn't miss the boat on, there's no term for a reserve officer. It's just once they're sworn in, they're.
Typically, we reappoint every year,
Yeah, okay.
so you'll have a list in front of you in June, and
Or the same.
we maybe probably should have, but he'll be reappointed in June for the subsequent fiscal year,
Okay.
because they
Okay.
happen every year.
Okay,
All right.
great. Good point, that one. Thanks. Okay, the next item is discussion of town trash and recycling pickup for Ocean Meadow Development. And this is continued from our last meeting. So I think Blake Seal's on, and
Tom Salvo.
yeah, Tom Salvo is
And
on. I
Steve.
think. Oh, there's Blake.
Oh,
Okay,
and
Steve
Steve.
B. Okay. So we did get some feedback from Mello regarding pickup. There would be, well, actually, Blake, why don't you go ahead and explain, if you don't mind?
Sure. No, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. The Mello Corporation said that they would, at no additional cost, pick up Ocean Meadows trash and recycling. He would need some kind of waiver of liability for their vehicle or truck to be on a private way. It would not cost the town, like I just said, any additional. The only cost would be for the actual, what we call tipping fee. And that would be obviously the tonnage they pick up in there would cost at this point $92 a ton. Recycling varies on how much it costs a ton. But once again, G-Mello will pick them up at no additional cost and give each individual a trash barrel and a recycling bin, if that helps you.
Okay, great, thank you.
So-
Oh, go ahead. Mike.
I just had a question. I know in the materials submitted for the last meeting, Tom or Steve, you estimated the additional cost to the town. Can you refresh my memory on that for the tipping fees?
If you don't mind, I don't have that with me right now. I think Angus and I believe we come up with a figure of approximately 5,000. Does that sound correct, Angus? And I apologize.
Yeah, and we were working with basically on a kind of an average tonnage of about 800 pounds of trash per person per year. So, and based on assumed numbers of how many occupants are in that development, we came up with just under 5,000. We think that's
Right.
In the
That's for
ballpark.
trash or for both?
For both.
For both.
I
Yep.
thought that they were, Ocean Meadow actually gave us.
They may have.
Well, actually, they had, I think what they did is a comparison with their current hauling number. They had done an estimation based on average, number of households in the community and
Okay.
current cost. And I think that was the way they did it, and came up with an estimated cost. And then they said that was less, or that was more than what they're currently paying for their private trash hauler, if I recall correctly and understood correctly. Is that true, Tom or Steve?
Yeah, this is Steve DePietro. I can speak to that. So that is true. We did an estimate of the cost to the town based on the town's budget, and the percentage of the town's budget to the valuations of the individual units for Ocean Meadow. So we did a calculation, and that number was, round numbers, was $14,000, which I think I mentioned the last call is more than what we currently pay our private contractors. And that was the reason we thought the town might consider some type of reimbursement or abatement. So that was the other alternative.
Yeah, it sounds like the real number we're anticipating at this point would be quite a bit lower than that. The other thing that I think is probably just worth observing is because of the demographic in Ocean Meadow, I'm in the same demographic you are. We probably generate less trash than a household, than a younger household. We may at least. So even, scaling off of the average for the town, Angus and Blake, may
Yep.
end up with a conservatively high number, which is probably better than a low number. Steve or Tom, again, do you know your current private trash hauler? Do they just charge you a flat rate, or do they charge you for tonnage?
No, again, it's Steve. I can speak to that. We have an annual contract that is based on a flat rate.
Okay.
So there's no tipping fees, there's no tonnage, there's no excess. It's just a flat rate for pickup.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And okay, I guess so. We can't really surmise anything from that. I was just wondering if there was a way to, clean up our estimate at all.
The only thing, Rick, if you don't mind, the only thing I'd like to comment is that I believe, and Angus I know is right there, and I'm sure he can hear me. I believe we did the $800 per person, and I believe, Angus, if I'm correct, please, tell me. If not, tell me also that we did, I believe, an average of 2 people per household.
That's correct, right? Yep.
Right. So with that said, I think we just took what we believe to be an average of a 55-year older complex, probably not to have many more than that in the household. We certainly, or I certainly could be wrong at that. So it could possibly be more, but I mean, I also, I'm not against picking up this. I think, everyone deserves a fair opportunity with their tax dollars, but I want to make sure that the board certainly remembers that this possibly could come up later on in the other 2 developments we have, which scares me because after talking to the Mello Corporation, if we have to start adding more than this, the contract will go up.
Yeah. Well, and
Okay,
that's a good point, Blake. I guess
Yeah.
one significant difference is that with those other 2 developments, there is specific wording in the subdivision approval document that
Agreed.
would not be responsible for picking up their trash. Whereas, and you have to assume that there were some concessions made on either end arrive at the final subdivision approval document. Whereas with Ocean Meadow, there was no provision for, there was no specific mention of trash pickup or not, trash and recycling pickup or not. So, so I don't think we, because we're doing it here, it doesn't imply that we necessarily would have to do it elsewhere, because there is something that would, legally says we don't have to.
I know, but the same argument about tax dollars.
Yep.
And in fact, the list that they
Right.
provided had an exclusion in their homeowners agreement that they didn't have to.
There was an exclusion in the homeowners?
Well, I mean, an exclusion in the development agreement, that said that they would be responsible for trash pickup, but the town reconsidered in light of the tax dollar issue. So, I'm not.
See, that's where I would agree with. See, that's where I would agree with Wendy. I'm not a lawyer, and I know we have Mr. McCarron to help us out, and I would agree with you, Wendy. I just think we're possibly setting a precedence that certainly could be challenged. Once again, I'm not a lawyer. I understand the wording was not in the acceptance of it, but I think where there are taxpayers on all the developments, we're opening up a precedence. It's my opinion. I have no problem with picking up, or we, the board, have no problem, and the town has no problem with picking up people's trash. I want to make sure everyone understands that we could possibly be setting a precedence for this.
Yeah, it's Steve DiPietro. It's Steve DiPietro. Could I just add one thing in response to that?
Sure.
We're just asking to be treated from an eligibility point of view like every other resident of West Newbury. We just happen to be a condo association, but if you put that aside, it just comes down to the residents of Ocean Meadow should be eligible for trash pickup because there is nothing that would say otherwise. And so I think, when I listen to that, I understand the concern, but in making our case, we're just asking to be treated like other residents of West Newbury who pay taxes, a portion of which goes to trash and recycle pickup.
And I agree. And I agree with you, sir. Sorry to butt in, Wendy. If that was, I can't see a picture here, so I apologize if I'm butting in on you, Wendy. That's the precedence I'm referring to currently the other two. I don't want to use the word condo because I don't call you people a condo, but the two other developments that are very similar to yours are going to say the same thing. That's what I refer to. And I'm not condemning Ocean Meadows at all. So don't get me wrong.
Yeah, Steve, I wasn't suggesting that we should deny this request for Ocean Meadows. I think
No.
there's a clear case for it because of the way the agreement was structured. But I do think that Blake is right and that this may become an issue down the road, but it's not really your problem. Other than that, you are also a taxpayer in West Newbury. So
Yes, thank you. And that was my only point. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well,
I guess all the questions were answered. So,
Yeah, I guess, hey, Blake, while we've got you, so obviously your board's in the middle of a big transition now with the transition to the new barrels.
Yes.
The board did vote this tonight, assuming they took the advice of Mello of a July 1st start date to allow some transition. Is it fair to assume they have enough extra barrels to service this development in hand and there wouldn't be like a delay on ordering more barrels?
Absolutely not, Angus. We have still quite a few up there. And no, there would not be a delay. We have sufficient amount of barrels that we could deliver to them immediately.
And that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, absolutely.
and Blake, so the barrel, we begin using the new barrels for automated pickup as of June 1st. Is that correct?
The only thing I want to be that Angus and I have spoken to the Mello Corp or emailed, whatever, we have had contact that the town itself, that sounds like I'm ruling out Ocean Meadows. The town itself is June 1st. Mr. Mello had suggested to Angus and I that Ocean Meadow would begin July 1st because they would need time to terminate their waste products, contract that they have with their current waste hauler. Okay. So we thought, and once again, Angus, please butt in, but we thought July 1st would be more appropriate for Ocean Meadows for them to get everything, all their ducks in a row, as I'll say, if that's fair.
That's right. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Other than that, yep, July 1st would be for Ocean Meadows. June 1st will be for the rest of the town.
Okay, great. I guess at the last meeting, I had thrown out what I characterized as a favor, and I'll continue it to consider something as a favor, and that was the idea of using a food waste compost or making it available at least to residents in your condo association. I understand that would be an increased cost to members of your condo association, and certainly I'm not suggesting it's something that has to be done, but long term, I expect it's something we're going to all be doing, and if you could at least consider that within the association, it would be a great thing.
Again, this is Steve DiPietro. As chair of the board, I'm happy to bring it to the board. If someone wants to send me more information on it, I'm happy to bring it to the board, and we'll commit to you now that we'll have a discussion. I don't know where it will go, but we will commit to have that discussion.
That's great, Steve. Yeah, if you could maybe shoot your, I'm not sure if I have your email address.
I've got it.
You have it? Okay, great, good. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we'll do that. I guess the chair normally doesn't make a motion, Wendy. I don't know if you're ready.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm not sure of the language. So I move that we add trash and recycling pickup from Ocean Meadows to the town contract
As of
as
July
of
1st.
July 1st.
And upon the homeowners association providing the satisfactory certificate of insurance to Mello.
Just like that. I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I keep waiting for Archie.
All right, thank you,
All right,
Steve.
yeah,
and
thanks,
Blake,
Tom. Thanks,
Tom.
Steve.
Thanks, Tom.
Blake. We'll write this up to memorialize it and just send you guys a quick note tomorrow. And you guys can be in touch with Mel directly and should be fine.
Yep, as soon as we get notification that they're ready, as of July 1st, we certainly will get their barrels to them well prior to that. So that's all we need is a little bit from the selectman's office or Angus' office, just telling us to proceed on. I know you guys voted and that's wonderful, but just tell us when you're ready.
So this is Steve DePietro again. I'm sorry, just one quick question. So as Blake alluded to, we need to go through a process, get this approved, get communication out, work with our existing vendor. So as we go through that process and complete that, who will we contact? Who are we coordinating with in terms of the town pickup? And the first question would obviously be, getting the containers and so on and so forth.
Probably communicate with the Board of Health.
Okay.
If you don't mind real quick, sir, this is Blake. Sorry if you don't know. If what you could do is contact either the Board of Selectmen or Angus's office, and then Angus will make sure that, all your paperwork, your liability insurance certificate basically sent to the Mello Corp, and then we will take care of it immediately as soon as Angus or the selectmen tell us to do so, okay? That's my opinion.
Okay, so we will communicate with Angus.
Got it.
Got it. Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everyone, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
I don't want to assume Rich Miller is here for this, but I think Rich Miller, who just logged in, is probably here for the Ocean Meadow.
Okay.
Isn't that it?
I'm not sure.
Anyhow,
Okay.
so,
Well, we can always ask the question. And his mic looks like he's not muted. Rich Miller, we saw you just came on. Were you there? Or are you on for the Ocean Meadow trash and recycling pickup question?
Yes.
Okay, we just voted to approve it.
Okay.
And so Tom and I can update Rich.
Oh, okay.
We'll do that
Okay.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
again.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item is the town just received notice of intent to sell under Chapter 61A, or land under Chapter 61A, known as the Graff property, located on Middle Street at the corner of Middle and Kimball. And the notification has been sent out, or was sent directly by the landowner to let's see, the planning board, the conservation commission, open space committee. I'm not sure who else.
Yeah.
Once you receive it directly, are the Board of Assessors, the Planning Board, the Concom, and the Select Board.
Okay.
And then that's under state statute, and under our local procedure, we then forward it to the other groups, including the Open Space Committee. So tonight's meeting or topic is really just informational to acknowledge receipt of the notification of the landowner's intent. This tonight is not the public meeting that's referred to under our procedure, which would come later in the process. So it's really just an acknowledgement of receipt and that the process has begun, and there's been a call put out for any comments on whether the town should or should not consider exercising its right of first refusal.
And those comments were being solicited from the other committees.
Yeah.
That are being notified. Yeah. Yeah, so there isn't a whole lot more to be said about it at this point, although I guess it's probably worth observing that what they show is a plan for 3 building lots, each a little bit under 2 acres. You know, not all the same size, but each just under 2 acres. I don't think there's much more to say about that.
No, there's not.
Okay.
Nope. Not at this point.
So do we have a date for the public?
Well, no, it's, the policy talks about giving 7 days. I think that's a really short amount of time. I think, you know, you could decide tonight, for instance, that you're not going to have the public meeting till June 28th instead of June 14th. The only downside of that, of course, is that if you do decide to exercise the right of first refusal, you know, you then have a shorter amount of time. But as Mike would point out, under the current, because of the COVID state of emergency, technically the 120-day clock hasn't even begun. You know, so I think, in my opinion, a more comfortable time frame to give those other entities time to really give you thoughtful comments probably would suggest that you take it up on June 28th rather than June 14th, but it's totally, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the open space committee doesn't meet till the 3rd Wednesday of the month, so.
Okay.
Mike, do you have an opinion on that?
There should be enough time to do it on June 28th. I don't think that, I mean, all the boards should have a good opportunity by then. And since the clock doesn't start until June 15th anyways.
Yeah.
It's
It'll only be, as of June 28th, will only be 13 days into a 120-day window. Right?
That's
right.
Okay. So I guess
Do we
we
need to
should
move that?
put that on the agenda.
I think that's good because it's certainly helpful for me to be able to give people some, you know, because as you saw in the note I sent out, I said a meeting in June.
Yep.
If I could say it's not going to be the 14th, it will be the 28th.
Yep.
That's helpful to everybody.
Okay.
So,
Great. So
Do we need to vote on that or no?
no harm in it.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I move we take up the request for right of first refusal on June 28th.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
I guess you had there's a item review of town meeting actions taken, follow-up steps. Was there anything in particular?
There wasn't, obviously, when the agenda was posted, we didn't know what would happen.
What it was gonna be, okay.
So I put that on just in case. As it turned out, you know, I think it went really smoothly.
Yep.
And, you know, we've started to get some things in motion, like putting the bill through for the paying the amount for the, you know, Whittier School. So we're just some administrative follow-up, but no, I think based on the results, there's not really any.
Yeah.
But you know, it's.
I guess the only thing I would say is that meeting went incredibly smoothly, and thanks to everybody who contributed. We lucked out on the weather. I think as we were walking back to the parking lot, we actually felt a few raindrops.
Yeah.
That was just a tease because that was all it was a few raindrops. But there was a certain amount of humor in that it was less than 15 minutes after the meeting had ended. Yeah, thanks to everybody in every department and volunteers who contributed to pull that one off. Personally, I think the last 3 town meetings I've been to have been the best. Just the fact that they're outdoors just makes them better. I like it. I don't know if we can keep doing that going forward, but I think we have to talk about it.
I think we've used up our weather.
Our weather window.
Yeah.
Could be. Maybe we'll have to schedule a town meeting on the municipal campus, leaving a window open for it being inside or outside. And
One thing is, as you know, the initial decision to have town meeting on a Saturday as opposed to the final Monday in April, which is what the town bylaws prescribe, was because of the need to have it outdoors, and therefore you can't have it really in the evening. on a work day,
Yeah.
when it's gonna be night. And that was what pushed it to a Saturday. There's lots of towns that do have a Saturday town meeting, and I
Right.
know that's been looked at over the years, but the bylaws say Monday night. So I think in addition to the indoor, outdoor, it may be a good time at a future meeting to talk and to invite public input, because there's pros and cons. You know, some people prefer one or the other. There's no right answer. But it might be a good time to look at that language in the town bylaw and say, do you want it as prescriptive as it is with the final Monday? Do you want it more open-ended where year in, year out, it's up to the select board? Or do you want to look at a different, day of the week, such as a Saturday as a regular town meeting time, even after COVID? So.
Yeah. Well, that's, I don't know when I think that's a great idea to have that public conversation and advertise it well beforehand, that it's going to be a public conversation. And the question is, when would we do that? There's no immediacy now, but I would think by the end of the summer, very early September, if we're thinking about that.
If there was going to be a bylaw change that you would want in effect for next spring,
Annual,
you would need to get it done in the fall. So
Yeah.
I think you, if you were going to put it on the warrant, you'd want to know that no later than roughly Labor Day.
Yeah, okay.
And so I think you'd probably want to put out some call for input, maybe in June and over the course of the summer, and then maybe have a meeting in August, and see what kind of feedback you get, and then decide if you want to put forward a proposal for the fall town meeting. Mike, you have some thoughts, it looks like?
Well, number one is that the selectmen, as we know, have the power to change the town meeting in themselves anyway. So they don't even need a bylaw change to do that.
You know that, but not everyone may, Mike. So if you could just elaborate on the statute.
Basically, is the statute allows the Board of Selectmen to alter the date of an annual, well, obviously they set the date for special town meetings. That's but they can, despite our bylaw, they could still reset it, which is what we did this year. The only caveat is it has to be done, obviously, before the warrant is posted, because once the warrant's posted, then they don't have that authority anymore. Only the town moderator has that authority. So theoretically is that you could change it. The second point I'd make is there was an article that was presented about, prior to your time, Angus, maybe 2015, where they asked the town meeting if they wanted to change the bylaw to Saturdays, which historically they've had town meetings on Saturdays, and it was voted down by town meeting. Of course, you could argue is that since the town meeting was on a Monday night, the people who showed up on Monday night wanted to keep it on Monday night, and the people who didn't show up and would have rather had Saturday weren't there to support it. But yeah, we did actually have that before town meeting about 5 years ago, and it was voted down. The article was brought by the Council on Aging, who was of the opinion that it was easier for the senior citizens in town to be able to, go during a day and not have to travel at night. And so they sponsored the article, but it didn't pass. So that's the perspective. We have tried it. We've gone back and forth, and there's always reasons one way or the other. A lot of parents with young children argued that it wasn't good to do it on a school night because one parent would have to stay home. And then we heard from the other parents is that you can't do it on a weekend because that's when the kids have all their activities. So we wouldn't be able to attend then. So there's no pleasing everybody. That's the bottom line.
Please, everybody.
Well, so maybe the annual town meeting is outside in the spring and the fall is inside in October, at night. I don't know. But certainly public.
Well, it's food
input
for
would be
thought.
good, yeah.
So, Mike, and I know we get plenty of other things to do, but, to cover tonight, but, so the select board designates the venue. Could the
Yes.
venue be the municipal campus, which would include either the annex or the bandstand? Or is that not specific enough?
You know, I think if you just give the general address, then it should be specific enough. I think as long as people aren't disenfranchised from
Yep.
being able to attend, then I think that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they would know that that's where, you know, when they arrive, that's where it would be. They'd be able to find it. So
Right.
as long as no one's disenfranchised and not denied the opportunity to attend, it would be okay.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the two locations are within 100 yards or less of each other, so.
Mhm.
Okay, wow, just food for thought. Thanks. Okay, our next item is discussion of restoring public access to the town office building.
All right, so obviously the world's changed quite a bit just in the last couple of weeks, more so than I think a lot of people anticipated with the governor's order. And so as of May 29th, basically across the Commonwealth, the mask advisory, it will become an advisory, not a requirement. There are no longer going to be any mandatory gathering limits. Vaccines are widely available. Here in town, we have between 75 and 80% of the population that's been vaccinated, which is an exceptionally high number, and credit to all of those who have worked so hard. So we did I've gotten a number of input from different people on staff, and as well as in the community. And we had a staff meeting last week to talk about what a reopening looks like. And so I've set out in the memo in front of you some recommendations that come out of that meeting. This is a starting point. It's not how it has to go, but I wanted to let you know what what my office thinks based on input from a number of different sources. So what I've outlined to begin the discussion tonight is that as of next Tuesday, June 1st, building access would be allowed during the customary pre-COVID town office hours, which is Monday through Thursday, 7 to 4:30, Friday 8 to 12. Departmental office hours would match the customary pre-COVID hours. So for instance, some departments like health and inspectional services customarily used to open at 7, whereas finance, assessing, town clerks would open at 8. But the building itself in this scenario would be unlocked as of 7, Monday through Thursday, and Friday 8 to 12. So I've been working with department heads to make sure that we've got the right per department schedule of hours. And so we would put that out this week and publicize that. DPW has been providing supplemental distancing assistance in terms of plexiglass, yellow chain stanchions. Because even though the requirement for masks across the Commonwealth would be advisory starting this weekend, one thing, and I'm sure you see this in your own place of work or what, you can't just flip a switch. It's a long period of time that people have been really kind of hammered with this message of distancing and masking. So I will tell you, people on staff would be, I think, more comfortable, at least for a period of time, to have face coverings, if not required, at least strongly recommended here in the town office buildings and the public areas. We would like to see some signage posted to encourage people to self-certify in terms of not having had a fever, not having symptoms or COVID contacts, encouraging use of hand sanitizer and hygiene protocols, and inviting people to limit their stay to the amount of time needed to complete the purpose of their visit, similar to the signage posted in the library right now. I would propose that the second floor restrooms be posted as staff access only for those people on staff who would prefer that, but that would leave the first floor restrooms as public access. We would take small steps like like leaving the conference room doors closed just to discourage public access outside, the hallways and customary public areas. So that's basically the parameters of what I put in front of you. It's up to the board's discussion how you want to go, but that I offer that as a starting point.
So were there suggestions that the staff made that you did not put in here? You said ones that were feasible.
We had some number of comments that all the restrooms ought to be posted staff only,
Yeah.
and I felt this was a good middle ground. That if people feel more comfortable, they can always go to the second floor, but it is a public building, and if people need to use the bathroom, we're all human beings. So that was one example. In general, it actually, it seemed like there was a lot of agreement. I do think there's some sentiment among some number of personnel of really, do we need to keep with the masks? But I think, some people feel that it's better to do that. And my feeling as manager would be, I want people to be comfortable. And I'd be very comfortable continuing to, if not require, at least strongly encourage wearing masks. Maybe in a month, maybe in 2 months, we move away from that. But it seems reasonable to me to continue with that for some amount of time.
People would, in their own personal workspace, would be able to take off.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just like you've seen,
Right,
for
right,
those of
right,
you
right.
who are in the building.
Yeah.
I'm just talking to common areas.
Yeah. So, and just sort of an observation of the, the plexiglass shields and that kind of protection. Going forward, that'll probably, now that we already have them, that'll probably increase overall health for people who are here, for staff, because of, less direct exposure to, people walk around, they don't realize they have the flu or they have a cold and they don't think about it. And, my guess is that it would be better for staff from a health standpoint. And for that matter, better for visitors. If somebody on staff has a cold, there'll be less likelihood of transmission between people.
I think that's right.
We've got the shields now, so we might as well continue to use. It seems to me we ought to continue to use.
So does every office or department have the plexiglass shields? I haven't been in all.
For the most part, I mean, for instance, conservation
Right.
doesn't really lay out well for that. Most departments do.
We think, Arch.
I think that the town should do exactly what the state does. I don't think we're highly vaccinated. We have to go back to normal. With what I do, I think that people are used to like working remotely, and I don't even, the concept is foreign to me. So, I mean, I'm in there, I have it coming from a completely different viewpoint, because I have my face in someone else's face for the past 2 years, so, my whole life. So I don't worry about this stuff. You have to deal with it, like, we can't live this way indefinitely. I'm kind of worked up at the moment, so maybe I'm not at my best to be discussing this. But I don't know. I don't see why, if you can go into the, Aubuchon Hardware, why is that any different? Or you go into Demoulas, why is that any different than going into the town hall?
You're saying in terms of opening or masking? Because opening, we're all in agreement on that.
But to require people to wear masks is I don't know. You said for like 2 months. That's
Some period of time.
People are going to be going to Fenway Park full capacity without masks in 2 weeks.
Well,
I'm just putting us in context of what everything else is doing.
Well, people have the opportunity to do that, but they may not necessarily do that.
That's true.
I mean, I think if it creates a level of comfort with staff to take these kind of halfway measures, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think it's gonna be a while before, I mean, some retail stores still have a sign up that you have to wear a mask. It's, it's their option.
Yeah, the other thing is that, for staff, I mean, staff are kind of a captive audience. They don't, if somebody walks in, staff doesn't have a choice whether or not to interact. If it's a Red Sox game, we have a choice whether or not to go to the game. But if you're staff, you don't have a choice whether, I mean, I suppose you could stop working and not work anymore, but that's obviously not what we want to see happen. You don't have an option regarding possible exposure. And I agree with you, the probability is very low. If it was me, I wouldn't care whether or not somebody had a mask, because I would figure I was protected, regardless of who was present. But not everybody feels that way.
I understand that, okay.
So maybe we could, proceed with the recommendations you've laid out, Angus, and then maybe revisit in a month to see if we want to change it, or 2 months, whatever the appropriate time is, if you feel like the mask restrictions or bathroom restrictions should be waived. Good way to go forward.
That sounds reasonable. So shoot for sometime and
So this would essentially
sometime
begin next Tuesday, right?
late July or so. I would say.
I mean, it could be, look, I said 1 or 2 months. That's not written.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I'm
That's
not,
too far
and
for
that's
me.
not what I'm
The
suggesting, is
CDC
what I'm
changed
saying.
their mind in
That's what I
2
said.
days.
Yeah.
So we can change our mind in 2 days.
That's where I'm going. It's the board can talk about this at any meeting, and I haven't said otherwise, so.
Okay. All right. So I'll let somebody else make.
I mean, people have been barraged by this public health messaging very intensely for 14, 15 months. It's not like you can just flip a switch and people feel like there's no risk. I mean, those who know best may believe that, and I think you believe that, and you might be right. But there are a lot of people who including people who had COVID and who are pretty henpecked about this. So, I'm trying to be sympathetic to that. And I don't think it's a big inconvenience for people to wear a mask. They've been wearing them for a long time.
Excuse me, Board of Selectmen and or Angus. Is it possible tonight that we could just take the suggestions, like you said, Angus, and say we'll readdress it on July 1st? But I mean, I understand. I listened in on some of the meetings with the, I really wasn't there too much, but the meetings that Angus had with, all the employees of Town Hall, there's definitely some concerned people. And I'm kind of like you, Archie. I mean, I feel as if it's time, but I think there's a lot of employees in town I think that we probably need to be concerned with. And I think we should say, it's just my opinion, so I apologize for interjecting here, but I think we should give them a month, and they may feel the same way as maybe you and I, Archie, but I think we should give them maybe a month to absorb this. It was an awful quick decision by the CDC to drop the mandate real quick. And I think I'm not trying to change your mind, Archie. I just think we need to respect, we need to respect the employees of Town Hall, and we'll maybe work them into it easy. But that's just my suggestion as a Board of Health member. And by the way, Wendy, welcome to the selectman's position.
Are we gonna have the door locked or no?
No. It's all spelled out in front of you, Archie. The doors be open.
Well, I didn't know if you had changed anything since I was here.
No, all the pre-COVID hours.
Yeah, so, So I think that policy is a reasonable point to be at right now, and we could reconsider, say, June 28th, as opposed to, because we have a meeting on June 28th.
Okay, I'll go along with that. Okay, okay.
All right, so I move that we accept the recommendations made by the town manager in his May 21st memo outlining the opening of the town office building, and review the status of it on June 28th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
What? Yeah, there's some poor old guy, he's on blood thinners and I just returned it.
So you can deal with it.
What?
So you have to deal with that tonight.
Yes.
Okay, so now, next topic is a very related topic, which is to do with public meetings and open meetings. So, and this, so I think, we expect that as of June 15th, the governor, and Mike, you can jump in, correct me if I'm wrong, but the governor hasn't made it absolutely certain, but the expectation is that the state of public health emergency will be lifted as of June 15th. So that raises the question, and the allowance for remote participation and virtual meetings was directly linked to that state of emergency. So once that's lifted, that allowance will go away unless there's something different that happens in the meantime, which could happen. So I think the question I have for you in anticipation of questions that I think my office will get from other committees and commissions in town is, can they continue to meet remotely? I don't think it's going to be an issue for this board where there's just 3 of you. I think you're physically going to be here, but I do think there's a question of, do we continue to do what we're doing here where you're physically here, but we're projecting it out through the web? Do we go away from Zoom altogether? Can members of the public show up in person or participate remotely? Do we want to try to accommodate both options? If we do, I've talked to our AV guy, Adam, about, I would want to come up with something better than this. I'm pointing to the mics that we have, where maybe we had distributed mics so that everyone's sound is like, if we're going to be doing this for 6 months or a year or a couple, maybe going forward, we need to invest, in my opinion, in better equipment so that each of the board and committee members can be clearly heard if we're going to accommodate these remote meetings.
Yeah, another consideration too is well, I guess we do have these cameras up here that tie to the cable system. I don't know how effective they are. I never look at the image. So, but so currently we're all focused on looking that way. If we continue with sort of hybrid meetings, if the meetings are open to the public and there are also people watching remote coming in on Zoom, then we probably want a camera out there so that if there's an audience, we're facing the audience, not the screen, I think.
And then, of course, this, what I said about this board, I think there's not going to be an issue of having the physical quorum present. But if you take a 7-member committee, unless the governor's order is replaced with something new, a quorum of that committee would need to physically be together. There's no allowance outside the public health emergency for that. They could still, in my understanding, have their meeting where they're physically present and still allow public participation, but a voting member of that committee or commission or board, the quorum has to be present.
Well, somebody can still be remote. It's just the quorum has to be.
Well, and it's only a single member under the Mullen rule. It's only a single member, right? So the quorum, or more is going to need to physically be present. So, Mike, what are you hearing from your town clerk listservs on what other towns are doing and looking ahead to June 15th?
It kind of like going back to normal, what it was before. Now, there is, we do have remote participation that's available. I don't know, and the quorum must be present, at the meeting, physically. But I don't know if it's limited to just one, though. I mean, obviously, it's limited to one with the Board of Selectmen because, there's only three of them. But I'd have to double check. But you go back to the rules. We did have remote participation before. Now, with Zooming, you can still do Zooming. We used to do, we used to broadcast on cable and we still can. So there's nothing preventing a board from, still allowing the public to attend via Zoom or via cable, watching on TV or whatever, and then participating by, calling in like I'm doing now. The next change would be obviously the public would be allowed to attend the meeting. I mean, that's really the two big changes is that a quorum of the board must be present and the meeting must be opened up, to the public who wants to attend. But the other factors of you putting it on cable, putting it in Zoom, you're still allowed to do that.
But I think that-
go ahead, Lynn.
I think the issue though is, yeah, it's fine for the select board or FinCom to have a partially here and partially there, but most boards and committees are completely Zoom. And for them to have this setup, I think it'll be a scheduling issue, right?
Well, a scheduling issue, an equipment issue,
Yeah.
certainly a training issue.
Right,
As you guys know, it took 3 or 4 tries with this before it worked, and it's still not totally great. So that's part of the direction I'm looking for, is if we want to accommodate boards, commissions, committees, having meetings that are also going to be broadcast through Zoom, I think we need to be looking at, scoping out what kind of equipment we need, how many rooms are we going to set up to accommodate that, because the technology is not designed for a hybrid like we're doing right now. We found a way to make it work. It took 3 or 4 tries, some trial and error. And that's with a 3-member committee or board. If we had a 7 or a 9-member, just the mics, I think we're going to want distributed mics that are going to tie into a single thing. And so the sound all comes in through a single port, and Adam, he knows the tech side of that in a way I don't, but I just need it to work. So if we're going to start making those investments, we need to really get focused on what we need to buy and how we're going to pay for it.
See, I think if you would ask me 6 months ago, I think I would have said no. But now I think when you consider, say, well, almost any kind of a meeting, but people usually aren't interested in the whole meeting. We have a parking issue, we want to talk to the board about that, or we have an issue about a playground or whatever it is. And Zoom allows, I think, greater participation by the public. In other words, okay, I'm not going to drive down just to talk for 5 minutes about someone parking in front of my driveway or whatever. But if they could get on Zoom and they could have it going on in the background, then they know when it's going to, that subject matter is now on, and they can participate in that. I almost wonder if it's like increasing public participation in the meetings, which is always a good thing. The technical aspects of it, I agree, aren't perfect. The sound isn't great, but in terms of public participation in the meetings, it seems like we can increase that, which is a good thing. I don't. So I would be in favor of I was trying to figure out how we can continue this. But with the with the bigger committee, then that's a whole nother issue. But having said that, for example, how many people from the public go to a Mill Pond committee meeting? Zero, right? Even though those that don't really get public participation, maybe they don't need to be Zoom. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being discriminatory, but some committees don't get public participation. So, I mean, the personnel committee doesn't need to be Zoom. If someone wants to come to that meeting, they can come to that meeting. I don't know.
I agree with you completely. You know, I think that continuing to have a Zoom meeting available, you know, a hybrid where people can be in person or they can be here in a Zoom meeting, you know, be here remotely in a Zoom meeting, increases the opportunity for public participation and sort of, you know, amplifying what you said about if you only want to be here for one item or one issue. I think, you know, this particular board covers a broad array of topics. And, you know, you look at an agenda like tonight, you know, we have, you know, 15 different topics or so on the 14 different topics on the agenda, plus whatever else comes up. Whereas most other boards or committees, if your item is on that board or committee in front of them that night, you don't know what time it's going to be, and you probably are going to go to the meeting anyway.
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking planning board and Concom. I mean, those can be 2 or 3.
Planning board gets a lot, not a lot, but they always get somebody there. Yeah.
Yeah,
but even the consultants that have to, you know, I think those are similar situations.
Okay. I guess I was thinking that there were, you know, I mean, if there are 5 items on a planning board agenda, that would be a pretty full agenda, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they might have to bring, Rick, they might have to bring plans and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I don't know would necessarily, if you're looking at this on Zoom, it's not gonna come up. But
Well, you share your screens. I mean, I think it can be done. I'm just saying, you know, we have to think about, do we have one like this hearing room set up for remote hybrid meetings and then invest in the equipment for this room, and then each committee has to schedule use of it. I don't think it would work in the planning board office or the conservation office to try to have, you know, cameras and everything. So,
So do we
that
wanna
could be
make-
an issue with plans and.
Do we want to set this room up as the, you know, sort of the prime location and then have to schedule accordingly? Is that the way to do it?
I think that's a good idea, and I think in the course of thinking through how it would work best, and for instance, like if it ends up that, you know, distributed mics is important, how many are there? What do they cost? What's it going to cost to get this room to where we can do what we're doing here, but with a room of 20 or 30 people here too? And are there mics that are going to actually pick up that sound and make it actually work through you know, we might find it doesn't. It's been a challenge with a small group of people. You know, we may find when you add the public physically here, coming to a microphone, speaking, each of you speaking, staff speaking, we may find it breaks down and it really just doesn't lend itself well to the remote platform. So I think we should, you know, look into it from the technical standpoint, work with Adam and the Cable Advisory Committee on, you know, how would you set up the room? What would it cost? And then I think, you know, find out, is that reasonable?
Just from past experience, Angus, that we did try little mics on shirts, and I don't know why, but it was terrible. People complained vociferously that they couldn't hear us.
One just quick note on the financial side, all that you've seen, you know, the investments that we've made, some of this equipment, the Zoom licenses, the GoToMeeting, that's all being paid so far by the federal government through the CARES Act. That's all going to end June 30th. So those Zoom accounts are $15 a month. So for a single account, that's $180 a year. Not a huge number, but if you have 5 accounts, you know, I've had suggestions from some committees. They think every committee should have their own Zoom account. I said, no, we're sharing Zoom accounts because it's not cheap. So there's a financial piece to this. And I think you can incur CARES eligible costs till June 30th.
That's how I.
Yeah, so I think if
What
we,
about capital expenditures?
there hasn't been a distinction. I mean, you know, with the
Okay.
CARES, there were all those HEPA filters at Pentucket. I mean, that was many tens of thousands of dollars. So I think the follow-up from tonight's meeting is we scope out what would it take to set it up in this single room to where those at home have a good experience with audio.
If we do it between now and the end of June, the federal government pays for it.
Knock on wood, that's the idea. Yeah.
So could you also reach out to other boards and committees and see what
Yeah.
they're interested in?
Yeah.
That's a great,
That's a good idea.
suggestion. Yeah.
Could I make a suggestion? This is Tom Salvo.
Sure, please.
What, has anybody given the thought of each of the select board members having a laptop or an iPad in front of them so that people viewing would see each of you, you would each have your own microphone and you could mute it just like spectators like myself and unmute when you want to talk. And I think that would
We
create.
did try that, Tom, early on, and that was one of the kind of trial and error phase with the FinCom. And what ends up happening is when they're unmuted, their mic is picking up the sound and it creates this feedback effect that's really unpleasant. There might be a technical solution to that, but we did try that and it really, it did not work. It kind of backfired because of the mics are hearing the speakers within the room and it creates that like really unpleasant feedback sounds.
Thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion, though.
So I think the other issue to consider is, will there be any requirement for boards or committees to meet in person versus Zoom? I mean, it seems like there should be some consistency, but different issues with each group.
Well,
I guess, Wendy, though, we have to do what the state said. We can't like make up our own rules, so.
Well, but what I'm saying, if the state says you don't, well, I guess, yeah. it would be
I think we
public.
will have, once the governor's, Mike's tracking a couple of bills on Beacon Hill that could change things, but the current law is certainly, once that state of emergency is lifted, the boards, committees, and commissions would definitely have to physically meet.
Yeah.
But as you see in the note in the packet from Mike, there's nothing that prevents a board or committee from making its meetings available through online or for public participation, not from voting members.
But it's possible the legislature could change something.
Yeah. Right. So, okay, so I think, we'll make that a priority to really get on that because I think we're going to start getting questions very soon from other committees on what are the rules after the state of emergency is lifted. So I think the default answer is going to be go back to the old, and in any case, public attendance will be allowed at meetings. There's no question about that. Public will be able to physically attend. The only question is, do we also want to try to accommodate a continued online thing?
Right,
So
right.
just to be clear about
Yeah,
that.
and probably each committee is going to have their own answer to that because there are some committees who will find it just,
Onerous.
exactly, onerous to try to set up to handle both at the same time. Whereas, we have Angus and Adam, Angus and Adam to keep us in line.
I can't imagine running a committee, trying to do this and, herd the cats all at the same time.
Right. I'm saying something.
Sorry about that.
Okay, good. I just want to put it out there for discussion, so it's been helpful. Great. Okay, the next topic is all related to similar, changing of the world here. So when the board took up the question a couple of weeks ago about allowance for Council on Aging to use the annex for basically a backup location when there's rain for their outdoor programming. It was decided that that would be limited to one event per day or per weekend to allow time for custodial staff to get in there in between. So now I guess the question before us is, do we want to, allow broader public and use by organizations and things of Annex, Mill Pond, Town Hall, meeting rooms here in this building? And if so, what is the expectation of janitorial or custodial? Is it different than pre-COVID, or is it just go back to the same?
Well, Angus, I would say that we were pushed too much at the annex just before.
We were.
The annex is a great meeting space, but a lot of people were taking advantage of us because the price is right, and private parties and organizations that just used us because we were the cheapest per square foot. So I think we should open things up, but in the interest of are not overwhelming the janitorial people and DPW and stuff, that keeping the number of, and I don't know what they are, one meeting a day doesn't, or I don't know what the good number is, but I think we shouldn't go back to have it being like chaos that there's continually people going in there.
People going in one door and other people.
Yeah, I don't, and the same with all the facilities. Yeah, use them, but I don't think we need to. It's not like we're making big money on the whole operation. It's not like we're making
I guess I would ask about the cleaning aspect. We probably each have a different perspective on the necessity for wiping every surface down. For the, I at this point almost call it, COVID obsession with cleanliness.
I agree with you on that, but I don't even think it's that issue. We were having problems with the toilets getting backed up because it was just getting used too much.
Yeah.
And one group came in and we weren't able to have say toilet paper restocked or whatever it was, and I don't think we need to go back to that situation, regardless of COVID involved.
Yeah. So that's going to be a real trick to meter it fairly. Is it? If you're the first person in line, is that the role that runs everything? Then the first person or the first group to request the space, or how do you decide who gets? If you're allocating one usage a day, who gets it?
I think we need to keep, sounds like there's two issues here. One is reopening after COVID and the other is overuse of the annex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems like we should keep them separate. I don't think the solution is the same for both.
Angus, why don't you talk to, first of all, I'm in favor of opening things up, but just maybe more limited than we did before. But Angus, why don't you ask Wayne and he can ask John and stuff in terms of what's instead of us, the groups dictating to us when they will use the building. Why don't we have the ability to say this is when it's going to be available and no more. Let DPW decide what's overkill and what isn't.
I did talk to Wayne about that, a bit before the last meeting, and again between meetings, where the last one it was just looking at basically public sector events, council on aging, blood drives, vaccination clinics, and Wayne felt that the one use per day was reasonable. He did say there's going to be times, our single custodian might have to work overtime because he has responsibilities to keep him busy full time without this. So he said there may be times he's got to put in some overtime to keep up with that. But I think
even one use a day.
yeah,
Okay.
not regularly, but it all depends on how things are left and what kind of service is needed. But I think if you went to something like the annex and the town hall and potentially meeting rooms in this building, each getting one use a day, I don't think Wayne was contemplating that. And I would suggest that we should think of the meeting rooms in this building as a different category that's maybe further down the road, and focus instead on the annex and the town hall and like the Mill Ponds building, where those are kind of discrete locations as opposed to, like a meeting room within. I'll tell you from my early days here, there were times that we wanted to use the meeting room and it was being used. And it was like, okay, because we actually are trying to run the town. And like, we don't have a meeting room because someone's playing cards in our meeting room. I was new here. But it was kind of, I thought it was kind of strange. Yeah.
Well, I mean, can we build in a cleaning fee into,
I think we ought to we ought to look closely at our fee schedule. And another thing that Wayne kind of brought up, not to pin it on him because I agree with him entirely, is we've had a longstanding policy of nonprofits don't pay a fee until they've used it more than 6 times a year. And he said, well, geez, if a parent's renting the town hall to have a birthday party for the kid, we're charging them a fee, but they're taxpayers who paid into this whole operation, and yet they're paying a fee. They're not making a profit. Like, why are we charging them and we're not charging some nonprofit group? So I think the whole question of who's charged fees and how much, I think there ought to be at least a modest fee for anybody, nonprofit or not. And I did talk to Annie about that since she, handles the admin. And I said, is that more work if it's a $10 fee? And she totally agreed. Even if it's a small amount, charge a fee because there is a cost, there is a benefit they're getting that's not the general public isn't getting. And she said from an administrative standpoint, it's almost better because then you have more accountability. There's a sense of like, you've gotten something.
I wonder what what is the typical cost to clean, say, the annex? What does it cost to?
In terms of hours?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it would be much.
I think the fee should be reflective of the cost to the town of somebody using the facility. I mean, it's great the facility is available, and just having availability is a big deal. So then, the incremental cost for your using it should be something you pay. Regardless of if you're a taxpayer or a nonprofit, and actually if it was a for-profit, then maybe the cost should even be a little bit higher. But
it is.
Yeah.
I think I've done a lot of fee setting in the context of like permitting and figuring out what is a typical A&R, and how many desks does it pass across. But I think I would look at it if we're looking at coming up with a fee schedule that's reflective of the actual staff time. Part of it's custodial. A bigger part of it is probably the administrative work that Annie's doing. Collecting the form, making sure the insurance, signing out the key, signing the key back in, making sure the facility's unlocked at the right time, making sure it's locked afterwards. Those are the little things that all add up. And I don't think it gets to any exorbitant number, but I think it's not just the custodial. And those are all, if you think about it from, taxpayer resources, everyone on staff is a taxpayer resource. They would not be putting in that effort if not for this entity that's using the facility. So that entity is getting a benefit that's not a general public benefit. So I think we should retool the fee schedule. Nothing outrageous, but that it's a truer picture of what it actually takes.
It would be interesting to try to do the best job possible estimating what are all the incidental costs.
Well, I mean,
that-
you can,
that-
you could really go crazy doing that, because you can figure out air conditioning fees and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, that should change. I mean, that, I guess, changed a little bit, but shouldn't change dramatically. But, you know, if somebody has to come to the building and it's using their time, I mean,
Or, you know, one thing that's tough, and, you know, where the staff person who does a lot of this is a 22-hour a week. So if someone comes and signs out the key when that person's on their scheduled shift, great. If they come to get a key at another time, it's gonna be Mike McCarron or me
yeah.
or Jenny or someone who's, so those are some of the things
Yeah.
that in the real world, like when you're dealing with part-time and full-time staff, you know, ideally we could say, like, you have to pick up your key within these hours. That would be what a private business would say, is,
So,
you know.
this is sort of off topic, but we've had some discussion at one point of touchpad type entry systems, you know, an entry system that essentially is a programmable entry system. And if that were the case, say for the annex, and somebody was going to use the building from noon to 3 o'clock on a Saturday, you know, you program the system and they come on in and they put their code in, and after 3 o'clock,
Yep, the code doesn't work.
yeah, the code wouldn't work anymore. Now, I don't know how expensive it would be to implement
It's,
that.
we'd love to, it is on the capital program to look at re-looking at the law for this building. It's a pretty costly thing. It's gonna be a couple of years before we get that funded.
It sounds good and comfortable.
It's great. A lot of towns have it, but it is complicated to set up and it's kind of costly.
So does Annie want us to actually talk about these?
No, this was just illustrative.
Okay.
Yeah, just to give you a sense that there is a lot of interest, as you know. I mean, my thought would be the mill ponds, you know, that's outdoors. I'd, you know, just go forward with that. I think we should start allowing, in fact, I mean, all of these uses, my thought would be, well, but Wendy, your points are, both of you made a really good point, as if it's just first come, first serve, like the calendar is going to get filled up really quick, and there might be groups that aren't watching tonight's meeting that don't find out for a week, and by then it's all booked. So
Right.
there is a fairness issue.
That's how do you deal with that?
I guess, you know,
But I also don't think some group could to say, we're taking 25 days and just
Oh, yeah.
wiping, they can't do that either. We have to have some kind of.
there's no policy that says they can't.
No, but we have to come up with.
Right.
We did say that people had to come back if they were gonna go more than 6.
That's right.
That's what we did with the Red Cross, because they were getting ridiculous in their demand.
So what groups, besides Red Cross, what groups use it more than 6? I guess there's maybe
The Scouts were at some point. I don't know whether there's a few years ago.
Well, probably the garden club would use it more than 6 times, right? Is that their regular meeting they were?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
The band practice, that's probably at least monthly. Right?
Yeah,
That was a new one. I don't think they've used it in the past, but the Merrimack Valley Concert.
yeah, there was a band thing there
Oh.
almost every weekend. Yeah.
This is Annie.
Oh, hi, Annie. Oh, I'm glad I didn't know you were there. I'm glad you're here.
I like when people don't know I'm here. The who uses it the most are the garden club, the Boy Scouts. We do have people come from the high school for uniform sizing. So they just call and fill out the form. But some people have it 6 months out. They'll want it. So I heard you saying first come, first serve. I don't know if there was a time limit.
Okay.
So I just to add one layer of complexity on this, I'll tell you that when following the last meeting with the Council on Aging, and so Teresa had kind of put a hold on all these future dates. And so we did that, but we also told her, you know, after talking with Paul, look, if there's something that comes up, a vaccination clinic that's not on the calendar now, but that comes up, you will be bumped. And we were able to say that to Teresa, and she may or may not have been thrilled with that, but she's fine with that. Can we say that to a private group? I mean, let's say, you know, we agree to, you know, just to pick a group that the Boy Scouts can use at such and such a date. And then as that date gets closer, you know, Paul told me today they're working on vaccines for under age 12. And once that's available, they'll have more clinics. You know, if there's a public health reason, should we have that caveat in there that even if we agree to this, we could bump you? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but these are some of the questions that Annie gets.
I would say yes to that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, public, I mean, that seems clear, but I'm sure there are other things that are not as clear, you know.
Right. Yeah, they're
Does
gonna
the
be gray
town
areas.
use get a priority over a, you know, for profit or private use?
I know that when I tell people when they sign up that if the town needs it, then that really comes first. If we have to take the spot, and a lot of people are not happy because they have to make plans to be there and they want the space, but they have to also agree that it could be taken.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is a public resource. You know, so.
Right.
So did we decide we were limiting it to one event a day? With
That
respect to
sounds
COVID?
like the direction. Hey, Annie, would you, not to put you on the spot, but if the board did say that kind of going forward, the annex, the Mill Pond, and the town hall would be made available for rentals, just like the old days, you know, what would be your, would you have any concerns about that? If it was one, yeah, just one a day?
I would have a concern that if Council on Aging has a Zumba in the morning and somebody calls and wants to have a meeting or something at 5 o'clock in there, sometimes Park and Rec used to meet in there, not Park and Rec, the football people would meet in there, coaches. I guess I would think that would be all right. It's just such a big span that you could have two.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what
She was saying it's such a big span of time between a morning use and an early evening use.
But that assumes the custodial staff is able to go and clean.
Right, and that's the thing. It's this. It's not. This isn't his only job, and there's also times he's on vacation, and we do have a backup guy we hire, but it creates a logistical thing that Wayne's then got one more thing to keep track of. You know, it puts us in the facility rental business, so which we are.
Boy,
but I'd like to not, I mean, I don't want to leave tonight's meeting and have 3 weeks go by. I feel like we should have some allowance for something, but maybe not.
Well, why don't we start again? We're starting slow on things.
For the month of June?
Keep it at one, even if it is just a morning something or other. Just keep it at one for the moment. It's been 0 for a while, so anything is an improvement.
so okay, and then after we have a month or so of experience and feedback, then
So maybe at the June 28th meeting,
Yeah.
we'll talk about.
we'll kick this down the road to June 28th as
This-
well.
I do
This
think
issue,
That's a good idea.
ever since I've been a selectman, is
it's a huge
it's
issue.
Well, we gotta
huge.
keep it separate.
We
Let's
keep
just do it.
modifying
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and it keeps coming back.
I would suggest that, you know,
Is it circular? Have we
Yeah.
gotten back to where we started?
I would suggest that, you know, if we go in this direction, that maybe we set a date that we won't book after a certain date. Otherwise, I think we will see the calendar full
Yeah.
for the next
Yeah.
8 months.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
And also, I also say that with an eye toward potential changes in the fee structure. If people know that the fees may change, you know, they might pre-book lots of dates.
Well, actually.
Okay, so at our next meeting, we can also look at that. the numbers.
Yeah,
Well, I think people should understand when they book that if the fee schedule is gonna be in flux, that the fee is gonna be what it's gonna be.
that's kind of tough. If
You can't
someone's-
I don't know if you can do that, like you sign up for something, you can't change it later.
Well, so then what time period are we limiting?
Well, I
this
think,
to?
I mean, you know, I think for the next meeting, you know, it's 3 weeks away, we can have an updated policy, an updated fee schedule in front of you that's like vetted by
Okay.
staff,
All right.
that's ready for you guys to act on. You can tweak it, but it'll be, you know, whereas here, obviously, we just had town meeting 2 days ago. This hasn't had a whole lot of time to put toward this. We could have, you know, some well-conceived recommendations, a red line policy. So, I mean, I would think if we start allowing bookings for the month of June, maybe go into mid-July, you know, that way when you vote on something new on June 14th, that would take effect, say, mid-July, a month later. You know, that gives people, you know, that way we're not holding people up who have things that are imminent, but it's giving us a little bit of breathing room to get the policy in place before it's opened up for the longer term.
Okay, so what are we gonna know on June 14th that is going to
I think you'd have a, so,
feedback on costs?
Like,
yeah, but,
Wayne can give us an idea, what is it,
What's an
Yeah.
appropriate
what's
use?
it actually costing?
yeah, well, and the actual document in front of you would be the facility use policy, which has the fee schedule attached to it. And so we
And
present
it-
it to you with
it's-
red lines from
it's
what's there
too
now to what it would be.
It is too complicated because it's like, if it's this size room and if it's a volunteer, or,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a profit, if they're out
Should
of
be a
town,
flat
it
fee.
is like, it's massively complicated.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that complicated. So you would have, you know, you'd have an amended policy and fee schedule in
Yeah.
front of you to vote.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
so we'll look to do that. I mean, there's nothing beyond that to do right now. I guess we'll look to see that for the 14th.
Yeah, but then in the meantime, you know, it sounds like, and Annie, I think I can speak for, I think we'd be comfortable with kind of allowing under the current policy to start resuming.
Out through mid-July or so.
No,
Right
up
now-
until
right
then.
now,
no.
Then
Right
people
now,
could
when-
start booking now.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
but you had suggested allowing bookings out into mid-July.
Like,
Yeah, not
like for
past that,
example,
just so
the-
people don't
the-
pre-
the
pre-book.
pre-
Right.
the preschool doesn't want to do it in August, they want to do it now.
Yeah, and I don't want to stand in the way of that. I
Yeah.
just don't want to, yeah, you know, it'd be good to have a little more time.
Just a quick question. I have a quick question. There's a number of people that want it within the next 2 weeks,
More than 14?
before the 14th.
No, I said more than 14 people in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, no.
I was just kidding, Annie.
Yeah, so one use per day until the next meeting, and then we'll talk about changes to the policy, right?
Okay, that works.
Is that okay?
Yep, that works.
Be ruthless, Annie.
I would love to show you that side.
Well done with that?
Yep.
Great. Here we go. So the next topic is discussion of potential policy changes to implement town response to the state climate change roadmap. So, yeah, I sent an email to Angus, which I know was forwarded, and hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. You know, my thought is in general that at some point we need to start, you know, on a as broad a scale as it gets, you know, we as a society need to start to respond. You know, there's movement at our state level, there's movement at the national level. And, you know, so trying to look at it as a, you know, sort of a practical way to deal with the issue for the municipality to deal with the issue of addressing our climate change impact. And, you know, so in the near term, I think we can reasonably say that we should basically buy nothing more that runs on gasoline or propane or diesel fuel unless there's no alternative available, unless there's no practical alternative available. And I don't really know how significant an impact that will be. Certainly it has will have a perceptual impact when people understand that that's the way the town is addressing things. There will be times where we have to buy vehicles, and when we buy a vehicle, just as we bought, our first hybrid police cruiser, there are, which is still has an internal combustion engine and uses gasoline, at least we'll use less. But fairly quickly, there are going to be electric vehicle alternatives, and we should look at those as viable choices when we have to make an acquisition of a vehicle. When it comes to tools, whether it's an electric chainsaw or a weed whacker, a battery-powered weed whacker, they're available. They work. They always start, assuming you have a charged battery. They never flood. You never get bad fuel. All these things work. They're economical, and why not make the transition? So that's sort of the first stage, and then the next stage would be to, at some point, we're going to have to do major modifications to pretty much all the buildings, well, most of the buildings that the town owns. The library is already using heat pumps, air source heat pumps, but for heating and cooling. But this building is heated by gas, which it's a fossil fuel, and at some point we're going to have to change that. So we're going to need to figure out how do we fund that when the time comes. And my thought is that, okay, so we've had one successful experience with solar, and it generates some significant, well, depends on what you call significant, but I think it's significant revenue. The town nets maybe $55,000 a year. Call it 50,000 for round numbers, but it's been consistently more than that. I don't know if we would achieve that degree or that size return with any other single solar installation. It would be a function of the size, a bunch of different characteristics. But so my thought is that the town take a position where we are going to install more solar, and any revenue that we get from that, instead of just going into the general fund as it does now, put into a dedicated account to fund building energy improvements going forward. So, 10 years from now, or maybe less, we look at this building and we say, this building could be heated through ground source heat pumps, but it's going to cost $100,000 to do it. But if we have a fund and we've been depositing money in the fund every year, then that could be the source of funding that particular improvement.
That all sounds very reasonable. Only one question: what would be so? Are we simply exchanging $1 for another dollar? In other words, we have to. If we had to construct the solar field on our own nickel, then we're just simply we're using that nickel instead of using it later. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, so I think because of tax considerations, we should never construct. We probably will never want to construct on our nickel a solar installation. I mean, if you look at the Main Street Solar, the one next to Page,
yes.
That's owned by, well, it was originally owned by Amoresco. Then they sold it to somebody else because that's the way that the tax dollars, tax credits are handled. But we didn't invest anything at all in that in terms of money.
Right.
And
Except for the land.
except for land, use of the land, right? So we lease the land, we get a pilot agreement, you know, a small pilot, you know, payment in lieu of taxes, so that we're not, you know, dickering over property tax, you know, personal property taxes every year. But most importantly, we get the difference between the energy.
So, no, I guess my question is, those kinds of deals are still available?
They are, and the math has changed. And that's why, you know, I won't attempt to guess at how the math works now. I know the math has changed because the incentive programs have changed because solar.
They're weaker.
Yeah, exactly, because solar has become so much more economical to install. You know, my thought is, say if we did something in the field behind Page School, you know, there's that north sloping field on behind Page School. Maybe that would be community solar, where the energy is available to people in town who save a little bit of money, but the town also can make a little bit of money. You know, so you share the benefit at that point. You know,
I think if those kinds of incentives and deals are available, I am, you know, totally on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, so could we change the way that the money generated by the Page School solar field is handled now, or is that always going to just go to free cash?
I mean, we could do whatever we feel is appropriate. You know, my personal sense is that money is already accounted for in
a sense.
In a just so everyone understands, in a very real sense.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
when we set the tax rate every year,
Right.
we project our non-tax revenues, and we have to provide documentation, DOR, of why we're making those
Right.
projections and are they legit. So if we took 55,000 a year out of that,
That's something we have to make up.
pretend that wouldn't be
Yeah.
a 5%
They would notice that.
increase on the tax rate. It absolutely would. So just so everyone's
So
clear.
it would probably have to be going forward.
Yeah, that was my thought, is that, you know, Main Street Solar is already spoken for. We've already plugged that in to our financial formula. But for future installations, they should be focused on the future, you know, on focusing on making our buildings, you know, future compatible.
I mean, I like the general idea behind that. So what would be the mechanism for a policy for acquiring a new fossil fuel?
Yeah, I think that would be a select board policy.
Have you
Yeah.
spoken with Wayne about it? to see if-
Not yet. I don't, you had mentioned that you might try to get some feedback from him. I don't know if,
No, what you and I had discussed was that a selectman policy would be the right vehicle.
Yeah.
And I had suggested if we had something we could circulate and then get some feedback, that
Okay.
could be, and so that's what we would.
okay, all right.
But
Yeah, so, and I wasn't necessarily envisioning that we would, you know, designate, you know, define a policy tonight and vote on it, but I mean, I think it's something that we should work on, and doesn't seem to me as though it should take very long to define the policy and, you know, and get feedback. And then, you know, move ahead accordingly.
But in the meantime, there's not like we're planning to buy any vehicles, you know,
Right.
or HVAC systems or
Right.
lawnmowers real soon. So I just, you know, I do, even if it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
You know what's on my list.
Right, right.
You know what's on
Yeah.
Wayne's list.
Yeah, yeah.
An hour on this that's not put toward hiring an assistant town clerk. Those are the
Understand.
decisions
Yeah,
I need to make.
yeah,
This-
okay.
this-
Not-
So
and
so
not-
I agree with you, but
Was that something that we could work on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could. I mean, we could, you know, we can't deliberate, you know, outside of this meeting, but we can, I guess, trade things with Angus.
well, I think, you know, if you draft a policy, you know, and there's no prescribed format, the
Yeah.
selectmen policies are all over the map in
Yeah,
terms of how they're written.
Okay,
And so you could distill your email to something that's more concise.
Yep.
You know, I think the sense of the board's clear. You could send it to me. I'll send it around to the, you know, I
Okay.
think that the police chief, the DPW
It's
director,
not-
and, you know,
It's not that complicated.
no, it's really not.
yeah, no, it isn't, yeah.
So I think if,
But there are two, there are kind of two parts to it, you know, one is, you know, avoidance of, you know, any new fossil fuel using equipment. And the second one is, it's really, it's, you know, it's
You
gonna
might
be
have to have two.
right, yeah. And the second one will require, ultimately to implement it, is probably gonna require, at least for, in some instances, would require town meeting buy-in. Because, or, yeah, but bylaw, yeah, well, yeah, there's the revolving fund, but there's also the, you know, the current solar zoning, or, you know, solar bylaw, zoning bylaw, requires it for anything 250 kilowatts or bigger, we need a zoning overlay district. And then that requires requires a town meeting vote. And, you know, that's, in my mind, that's an unfortunate bylaw, but that's what we have.
because the commercial scale for something to be viable for ground mounted solar is well above 250, isn't it?
No, you can, I mean, you could do something probably 100 kilowatts, but then it's only 100 kilowatts, you know, it's not that big, you know, that'd be like 10 houses, what, you know, the average system is on a house at this point. You know, so several weeks ago, two other people on the Energy and Sustainability Committee and I and two people from a company called Select, which is a solar company, looked at a number of sites in town, and they're supposed to be coming back to us with some feedback about those sites. And there was, you know, this is no commitment. This is just, you know, we want to consider, you know,
Town sites.
Yeah, town sites, 10 pieces of town-owned land, and you know, we need some numbers to have any conversation, any substantive conversation at all. You know, we can't just talk about completely vague stuff, even if they're estimated numbers and we know that they're not very accurate. As long as they're in the ballpark, then we can have a real conversation and think a little bit about how we move forward.
That's cool.
Yeah. Great.
Good.
Thanks. Okay, discussion of FY22 committee appointment process.
Yeah, I guess I had kind of talked to Angus about this. It's not clear to me what the process is. And I think there's some, not confusion, but some lack of understanding about how it's supposed to work. And I think some committees try to find their own people to replace an opening. I just feel like there needs to be a clear process if there's an opening on the committee, how that gets filled, you know, what the select board role is, what the committee role is. I've seen some other town charters that say the opening has to be listed on the town website for a certain number of days before it's filled, just to try to make sure we get, you know, lots of new people and you know, a variety of interest on committees. So, I mean, that's just one thing that I've seen, but I think at a minimum, we should have a clear process.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it's clear in your mind, Angus, about how it works, but.
Well, as we've talked about, there's, you know, there was nothing in writing when I got here. And this past fall, I did put together a flow chart just so that it was clear among staff how it was handled. But there's not been, you know, this time of year, we put out a call for those whose terms are up at the end of June to see if they intend to seek reappointment or not. And we would put out, you know,
Which even that is an improvement over the past.
Yeah. You know, I know that didn't necessarily happen the last couple of years. It did this year, so that's a step forward. But you know, when I go back, you know, years ago, the board was sending appointment letters, and it was more formal, and it's been less formal, partly because Williams real staffing issues, as you know. I think with the assistant town clerk position going to full time, that's going to allow us to have an individual who's got the time to really do that start to finish. So that's going to be a big plus. But that we're just posting that job now, so that's not going to be filled for a while. So I think for the current reappointment process, it's been up to the board. Sometimes with reappointments, there's not an expectation people even come before the board. So if for instance, the board wanted, a better understanding of what that individual's interest is, even if it's reappointment, that would be something you'd need to tell me, because historically, there's not been an expectation that people even show up for reappointment. It's just kind of, if someone's interested and they've been serving, the board typically takes them up in mass. For new appointments, we try to publicize the opportunities. I think the info that was sent out before town meeting and at town meeting, it was a plus. We can continue to send things out via emails and social media, and any application for appointment we get will come to the board. Typically there hasn't been a really necessarily a vetting process. So if there's an expectation that the relevant committee is getting some advance notice of that, that is going to have staff time implications and time implications on the calendar. Especially, if a committee is only meeting once a month, we got to get these appointments made. I don't know. I guess what's, what do you want to see happen?
I just want there to be, I'm not even clear myself what the process is, so you're saying that the annual reappointments, that's just like a, kind of a done deal. So
it's typically, I don't necessarily think it should be, but it's
in a lot of cases we're desperate. We need the people, and if we were overly overly picky or whatever you want to call it, we wouldn't have. We need the people to. There's so many committees, and we're such a small town that in a lot of situations we're trying to get people that are on a committee and have at least gained some historical perspective and have some institutional knowledge. It's hard to, you don't want to lose them. I guess that's the because then you start a committee member, no matter what the committee, for a few meetings it's useless. They don't even know what's going on. So it's keeping people quite often is we try to encourage that, I guess.
Yeah. If somebody has been consistently, participating, or attending committee meetings, then they're gonna understand something about what the committee does, and unless I can't think where this ever been the case, but unless there was some malfeasance, you'd like to see them continue on the committee. Because
I wasn't speaking to reappointments. I'm talking more about, we have several openings that have been there for a while.
The question is, how do we find new people?
Yeah, but I also wonder what the select board's role is in this. Do we want to have a say in the makeup of a committee, or do we just want to take whatever committee brings to us that we want these people on it? Do we just say, okay?
Well, the committees haven't typically brought candidates to the select board.
That's pretty rare.
They may have let those individuals know of the openings, and that's why the individual put in. And that may happen.
I think it's fairly common that when somebody shows interest in being on a committee, that they've been lobbied. They've been reached out to.
But I guess what I'm referring to is how it's presented to the board or to my office. It's not. I can think of, not to pick, but like Fred, is so gung ho on tree committee. It's terrific. His energy is infectious. Everyone knows that.
Right.
Fred sent me. He's like introduced me via email. Hey, this person would be great. And so it's not like that never happens, but more often than not, when my office or when Annie gets an application for appointment, it's from that individual. It's not. No one's like lobbying the board, it's that individual step forward. If they were step forward because someone on the committee asked them to, we wouldn't necessarily know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's good if, particularly if somebody has particular qualification that makes them a good, that makes them, that gives them a set of knowledge that's useful for a committee, then however they come along.
Like the
great.
people on the investment policy
Yeah.
committee. They're sort of self-selected but in a good sense. Yeah.
They're powerhouses in what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I think if, Wendy, maybe to your question, if this board has an objective for the work program of a specific committee for the subsequent fiscal year, is it appropriate for the board in its consideration of appointments or even reappointments to ask those committee members where they stand on certain objectives this board shares? I don't think there's anything wrong. I think that's great.
We've
I think
never
that's,
done that.
yeah, we've never really
but
done
it's-
that, but I think it's great.
Totally within our purview.
Yeah.
would
Or
just-
even, on the issue of the solar bylaw, there's an opening for an associate member. I think getting someone on there that shares this board's interest and having that bylaw looked at seriously, I think is great. That's nothing but good.
Yeah, I guess that's what's behind my questioning is, in order to get all the committees like on the same page, moving forward with the same ideas, maybe this is an opportunity to try to, think more long-term about what we want the committees to achieve and what kind of membership should be on it to make that happen.
Yeah.
So just kind of a general, there is a specific point that I don't know where on the website people would go, like to find out about how to volunteer. It's the opening view copies on the select board website.
Well, but there's
Right.
but there's a volunteer button right on the homepage
It's
that
right
takes
on-
you to that.
Right on page
Right.
1. Yeah.
And it says fill out this form and,
Yeah, it
Which
goes
ones-
to the
which
page
things
that's,
are all available and everything.
if you click the volunteer link, which never used to be on the website, I added that. It takes you to this page.
right.
Um,
But is it clear that, it would be nice if with each one of those openings, contact the department person or the chair if you're interested in information about the board, fill out this form, it'll be reviewed by the select board. Just like a general, step-by-step on how you get appointed to a board. It might be helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm open to a rewrite. We do the best we can here, so.
No, it's not a criticism. I'm just saying, if I add some steps, maybe that can just be added.
Sure, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't know how, we try to reach out to let people know what committees need participation. But I don't know how, I don't know how much exposure it gets. How many people see it.
I think that's always an issue in a small town. You get the same people volunteering for the same boards.
But I shared with you the flow chart. It's not necessarily a stepwise. We're trying to make it better, and with the staffing
because of the
adjustments
difference,
were
yeah.
made because, the select board staff person has a role, the town clerk's office has a role, my office has a role. And part of my management philosophy is make the simple stuff simple, because there's so much that we're dealing with that is not simple and that does require real time. And the more time that our very few number of senior staff like myself and Mike McCarron, the more time we're spending on the simple stuff is just taking us away from all the other stuff. So that's where something like appointments, with expanding the hours for the assistant town clerk and making it that individuals like have ownership at start to finish is going to be a huge plus for efficiency for this town.
Yeah.
Because right now I can tell you these appointments, it's not a huge amount of time in one, but it's a 100 little things that all make the few of us that have a lot of responsibility much less effective because we're drowning in this stuff.
Yeah. So it's your
So-
vision that the town clerk will take the whole committee appointment. That's.
I do think there is an important role for the select board staff person on like point of introduction and like sending, maybe a letter of appointment, there's like a courtesy element, but I think the mechanics of it, in every town I've ever worked for, it's the town clerk's office that
Okay.
handles all of
Yeah,
that.
that makes sense.
And just, we haven't been checking up whether everyone's done their ethics, biannual tests and
They're getting
all,
sworn in.
and all that kind of stuff needs.
Swearing in's been, that, we've done that, it's just, it's not happening efficiently.
Yeah.
I know there were a few boards that I didn't get sworn in on, which is on me, but somebody needs to, have that be part of the check.
Yeah.
checklist.
Well, I know that Marie Falzani is working on that right now. But it takes both sides, so,
Let's just be frank, it takes a staffing structure that is
Right.
proper for all that we're doing, which
Yeah.
we do not have, and we have not had for the entire time I'm here.
Yeah.
That's the fact of the matter. Once with this new budget that was passed Saturday, and we add these hours in the clerk's office, we will have proper staffing. We have been understaffed significantly for the whole time. That's the fact. There's not been, so someone should do this. There's not someone. We don't have that many people on staff. We will, it's all gonna be fine, but that's the fact of the matter is everything you see, we're doing, like a couple of people are doing all of the work. It's not sustainable. So, and it is much better than it was 3 years ago, much better. So.
Wendy, to your point on how do we get people? I think all different kinds of ways. There's no, you're talking to somebody about, I don't know, trees, and they're really passionate about trees. You tell them, well, go talk to Fred. You might be interested. That kind of, or indirect, that kind of, word of mouth selling of a committee. If someone's always complaining about their taxes and their or whatever, I always tell them, well, you should go in the FinCom and see what's really going on. I mean, just that kind of thing. I think we do the informal kinds of things like that, as well as just what's on the website, and we announce it at meetings like this. Anything we can do to get new blood is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain extent, select board is, we have to be salespeople for committees.
That's
And-
exactly.
I mean, that's the way I look at it. When I'm talking with somebody, I'm always sort of listening and, is there something that, should I ask this person about this particular committee? Would they be interested, and sometimes, on occasion, it actually succeeds.
But then people always ask you, well, how many hours is involved?
Just a couple.
Oh, it's nothing.
Well, maybe this could be an agenda item once a month for this board, just, as part of the announcements like you did tonight, just to say what boards have openings.
Yeah,
or
no, that's a
highlight
good
one
point.
just
And
came
that was
up.
good that you laid those out, Angus.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good point.
So then the reappointments will be happening July 1st?
No, the 14th and the 28th. Some
Okay.
we've already got some applications come in, and we could put them all to the 28th. I mean, I'll work with Rick as chair. He sets the agenda, but I would think we would get some done on the 14th, so it's not all coming up to the last
Yeah, because
minute.
otherwise it'll be 100.
Exactly.
Whatever the
Some
number
things
is.
are pro forma, that
Yeah.
certain individuals have to be on certain committees, so you just have, but they still have to be formally reappointed.
Yeah, so you'll have some on the 14th, you'll have more on the 28th. There will always be some number of vacancies, and I've worked in a lot of towns. That's not an indication of a failing of this town. I mean, you look at a town this size and the number of, if you add up all the board, committee, commission members, it's a significant, it's probably over 100 people. That's a significant.
Is it really that many?
Probably, I haven't, I have a database, but there's so many duplicate names,
Right,
I haven't
right.
taken the time to.
No,
but it's
I
probably
bet
orders
you're
of
right.
magnitude.
Okay.
You figure there's about 30 committees and boards and commissions. And if the average size is, 5, or, that's, and then there's some duplications, probably about 100. So it's not.
Now that Wendy's off, 7 of them, the number's gonna drop.
But,
Right.
you know, so I think, for instance, the fact that there's not, you know, an associate on, you know, the zoning board of appeals, which hears one application every 3 years, like, isn't, in my view, a failing, whereas not having an associate on the planning board, which has business before at every meeting, that's a
Yeah.
bigger issue.
Right.
FinCom, that's a big issue. Concom, we gotta obviously have a full Concom. So, you know, some of them, I mean, we might look at the committee composition and say, maybe there's just too many openings. You know, maybe the committee doesn't need to be 9 people for a town this size. Maybe it could be 5. And then we wouldn't have any openings. So there's a couple
That's
ways
one
to
way to
look at
deal with it,
this.
yeah.
You know, I think for people who want to get involved, there's plenty of opportunities to get involved. And I think that's an important message to get out there.
Well, so hopefully somebody's listening to this and saying, hey.
I think we probably lost them
Right.
a half hour ago.
Okay. Okay, review of request for clarification of effective Commonwealth designation of Juneteenth as a holiday and a local option.
So we did have that question come in. The governor did recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. It falls this year on a Saturday. The holidays that employees receive are spelled out in the personnel policy. As you know, we're undertaking what's going to be a major effort to retool the personnel policy, kind of top to bottom, and that's part of that. This issue has also come up in some union contract negotiations. Where it falls on a Saturday, there is only one, other than public safety, there is only one office that's open that day. That's the library. I do think if you recognized Juneteenth as a new holiday, you know, that's going to have a ripple effect. My recommendation would be that since the personnel policies are kind of actively under review and multiple union contracts are open and currently being bargained, I would think, you know, you would not recognize it this year and say it's under review, and then look at it comprehensively with all the other personnel policies and just make sure that, you know, if it's a decision you make to recognize it, that you do so understanding the full implications of that. That would be my advice.
My only comment is very few towns have addressed this. Like if you look at the police thing before, like three or four.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one more cost factor, you know, it's, you know, I think I don't need to get too philosophical about it, you know, recognition of the issue that, you know, that causes there to be a holiday is important. But most people aren't going to take it that way. They're just going to take another day off at the beach. You know, if people took the day off and then they did some form of public service, to me, it would mean a lot more than just everybody having, you know, another day to go play.
So I'm sorry, did you say that it was it's going to be a state holiday?
Yeah, the governor signed legislation. Mike, do you have?
Starting this year or?
Yeah, he signed it right around the New Year's Eve. It was right at the end of last year. It was we talked about it a few weeks ago in the context of one of the union contracts. Mike, do you have that detail handy?
It's in. I've looked at the statute. He actually signed one in a first iteration last July, but then they changed it to about down in December, and it's in the state holidays. It's the beginning of the statutes. I could get you a quote for it, but the important thing to recognize is that the municipalities are not subject to it unless they adopt it.
Oh, okay. So we just hold off on that?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to make a motion and vote on it. But I guess it wouldn't hurt if we want to make a motion that we consider it again at some point in the future. I don't know, we have to be date specific.
We will be having meetings on the personnel policy broadly.
It's gonna come up again.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I don't think we need to vote on when it will come up.
Yeah, okay.
And, and the question from staff was just a question of clarification. There's, people may think other than what they're saying, but no one has asserted that they feel it should be a paid holiday. It's just been a question of clarification so far.
Okay. So we'll talk about that again at some point in the future, and certainly when we get into the personnel policy, that will be a topic.
Great.
So the discussion of town offices phone system. Was there, Angus, was there anything in particular that precipitated that coming up? Now, I know the phone system has been a problem. And,
Yeah, I had asked about it actually.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean, Angus filled me in about, what this capital improvement program summarizes. I guess I'm wondering if there's something that can be done short term. I had experience this week where I didn't have computer access and I was trying to reach Annie. And I tried the resident administrator, sent me to Jenny. I tried the select board administrator, and it sent me to Marie. And then so I tried searching for her name, her last name, and it said it didn't recognize her name. So there's clearly a menu issue with it.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, if the Board of Health added a new phone line for the trash and recycling, there has to be a capability of fixing the menu, short term, outside of this.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we could bring the vendor in. I guess I didn't understand that was the issue.
Yeah, and I'm
But
just
yeah,
like,
there
am I
is-
the only
there is
one that
just
this
a
has happened
single-
to?
There is just a single vendor who services this system, and
Yeah,
so, but no, we can bring them in, and as long as I'm specific with what needs to happen. But I can tell you that whatever level of discontent, the public has with the phone, we at the staff level, you can probably multiply
Manifold.
that by 10.
I've been,
Like, people hate the phone system. It couldn't be fixed soon enough.
so what is it that staff hate about it?
Oh, God.
Like the quality of the sound?
The quality,
Yeah.
I mean, that the voice is so, you can't even hear it. When I'm on the phone and someone rings in, I can't pick up the second call. I can just see it going to voicemail. So I'm
Yeah,
seeing calls going to voicemail and I'm sitting right at my desk.
yeah.
Other towns I've worked in, that have the voice over IP, you get the voicemail, it comes to your email. So even if you're out in your handheld, you get your voicemail right away. That's great. We don't have anything like that. I don't like that there's a single vendor that anytime a single problem happens, we call him and we get a.
but I remember dealing with this.
I don't like anything about it. It's the worst phone system I've ever.
Years ago, people were complaining about it
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
8 years ago. Yeah.
So it's
I've always wanted to consolidate everything. Emergency management has one cellular provider. The police have another one. We're getting no economies of scale too. There's so many different vendors on our, just the whole.
But that's the cell phone's a whole different.
I know it's a whole different issue, but it's all related. There's no connection between anything.
Since I've been here, we have made a little progress on the cell phone issue, but that's just for going forward, not for, because different people, if you call Verizon, different people are authorized on different accounts. So it's not like my office can just call and bring them all together. It's a nightmare. But the actual phone system is what we're talking about tonight. So there is a vendor that Wayne has had 3 different calls scheduled with, all of which have been postponed because either he's had an emergency or the vendor has, but they're on the state bid list. We're trying to get a better handle on what the scope and budget would be. I do expect it to be into the tens of thousands to totally redo the phone system in this building, which is why it's on the capital program. So right now it's penciled in for FY23. So that means before next spring's town meeting, we'll have, a clear scope and budget, and we'll have a specific proposal. And if it's approved, we could start implementing it, as early as a year from now. But in the meantime, it's a daily inconvenience. But just knowing that doesn't make it any easier to solve.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I guess at a minimum, if we could maybe, does this vendor come in and just update the menu periodically?
Yep.
Or maybe that's all that's needed right now, just to get us through. Because I'm just imagining there are people in town who try to call in and maybe have the same experience I did. I don't know. That's the case or not.
But if someone calls in and they say, I want to speak to the town manager, but they don't know your name. What happens then?
Well, there's a voice that reads through for the town clerk down 111 or whatever.
Right, but there's not that many of those.
Right, so there's quite a few.
There are quite a few.
But I listened through until I heard the one I wanted, but it put me to the wrong person, and then it went to a different one and put me to a different person. So maybe it's just that position needs to be updated. I don't know.
Well, and it could be, you mentioned, one of them sent you to Marie. Obviously, she's a fairly recent hire. It's possible, there's something to do with it didn't get updated after that. But, part of we try not to call in the vendor that often because we get a bill.
Sure, yeah.
But we don't want it to be wrong. So I need to understand that. The other issue is because it lists town clerk first at 110, town manager second 111. That does, people often go to Mike or me first, so we end up being in the switchboard for the whole building. And it's true. So I get any number of calls over the course of the day that I'm simply, forwarding to someone else. So these are the little inefficiencies that.
No, but that's a huge inefficiency.
Welcome to my world. There's a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah. So then if we have the vendor come in to correct the menu, maybe you could get a new extension.
Well, but then that's a bigger problem because that's telling every vendor and every contact we have that I'm no longer 111.
All right, so then just read them in a different order.
We
Start
can
at
read them, but then that's
156.
like got its own problems because then you're, it's.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. So, but again, once we have a full-time town clerk who's here pretty much all the time the building's open, obviously that person's got other jobs to do than just be the switchboard, but at least it won't be Mike. Like that's the problem is we have a couple of senior staff people who are doing so much work that should be delegated, but there is nobody to delegate to. That's the thing that I'm trying to bring across. So
we hear you.
Yeah. So, a new phone system is what's really needed. Last year, I remember it went down. It was down for several days.
Several days, yeah.
And that means nobody can call in unless they happen to have your cell phone number. Nobody can call in.
Right.
And that was horrible. Right. And we had to post out on social media, hey, our phones don't work.
Yeah. No,
it's embarrassing.
So you try to figure out what is the cost of that happening. It's big. Whatever it is, it's big.
Yeah.
And people can't do business with the town at that point. So.
Just a point of history is that, remember, this is a state-of-the-art phone system circa 1996.
Yeah, right.
And one of the problems we do have with it is that, well, the phones themselves are actually a decent piece of material. The CPU is circa 1996. And if it were to go down, there's There's no replacement. There's no parts, there's no nothing. It's been discontinued for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a problem. The
And
vulnerability.
You can see it right in the mail film. It's that big
Yeah.
clunky old, yeah. So,
Just hope it lasts till,
yeah, but yeah, we'll get the vendor in to fix the menu issue, but I think it's, the bigger picture is we want to get it funded so we can fix it right.
Yeah. So will that be on the capital improvement list for next year?
It's already in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it all, it's got to be funded.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be brought forward as a project for FY23, and assuming it gets recommended and funded, then it would go forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
so the next, the notice of availability of MVPC's draft FFY's 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program. So there's potentially grant money available, correct? Potentially, with the TIF, the transportation improvement.
In order to be eligible for any federal funding, you
Yeah.
have to be on the TIP. That's the 5-year regional transportation improvement program.
Okay.
So yeah, but getting on the TIP is important to be eligible for state or federal funding.
So when you say that's getting a particular project,
Mhm.
okay.
And it's a competitive process within the region. The region
Okay.
has to see it as a regionally significant project.
Okay.
It's not enough just to ask.
Okay. I'm not really familiar with the program, so I don't know.
It's how every dollar of federal transportation money is filtered in this entire country.
Yep.
Is through the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which in our region is MPPC. They do a 5-year TIP, Transportation Improvement Program, and in order to be eligible for any of that funding, you have to be on the TIP. In the old days, back when I was in Marshfield, I don't know if this is still correct, but in order to even get onto the TIP, you had to have a project at 25% stage of engineering. I don't know if that's true. We send these projects to MVPC. They don't tend to get added. Within our region, there's much bigger regional concerns. It's important for us to continue to advocate for ourselves.
I mean, we try.
Yeah, we try, but it's not like there's some pot of gold that's sitting there untapped. I mean, getting on the TIP, there are projects that can be on the TIP for 30 years.
There's no downside to picking a couple projects.
Yeah. So that's what I've outlined is, a couple of things that I think are kind of the short list, which would be the Middle Street Bridge, Route 113 reconstruction from Page to Pentucket, sidewalks, crosswalks, and pedestrian safety improvements on Route 113, especially near the schools. And then I've had this on here for a while. It's the Main Street, South Street, Moulton Street intersection improvement. We send these in. Whether these get on the TIP is something that's decided by MVPC based on the vote of the whole region. So, we have a rep.
Who is our rep?
Brian Murphy.
Okay.
So.
But I mean,
okay,
you
so
can
rep at
imagine
MVPC.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But you got to convince.
Bigger fish to fry
Yeah,
than a couple of sidewalks in West Newbury.
Right.
Basically.
Basically. So I think it's important to always put in comments when this opens every year, for public comment every year. And so it's important to,
So I always say that putting a sidewalk from up to the Page School, which is still I still think it's an undertaking that the town will never be able to handle itself. That's what I always support.
Yeah. Where does the sidewalk
It
end? Right.
ends
training field.
It ends at the training field,
Right, yeah.
library,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
So these comments are due tomorrow,
Uh,
May 25th? Is that what?
that's,
So kids can't, even this closest kid cannot walk
Right,
to school at the Page School.
yeah, I mean, it's like, there's no narrative, it's just a list, like,
Okay.
it's not, you know, if I show you the email threads of prior years, like, it's a very superficial, it's no more than what I've outlined here.
Okay.
So how do we get these projects on their list then?
Well, I can send MVPC a note, say these are the town's priorities, and they'll either include them or not, or they won't.
Okay.
In past years, they haven't.
Yep. The Middle Street Bridge, so design is mostly complete. I mean, permitting is in process. I mean, that's a real project.
I think that's a more real project this year than anything we've seen
Yeah.
in the 3 years I've been here.
Yeah,
It's a real project.
yeah,
It's gonna be shovel ready.
right. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me as though that,
But it is also important to keep in mind, it's a 5-year plan. So if you get on the tip, you're not gonna be in year 1. Your best hope is they'll put you on year 5. Because you're in line with everyone else who's already been in the tip
I
for
see.
years
Okay.
and been languishing in the tip.
okay,
So there's 5 times as much need as there is projects on the tip in terms of dollars. Like, it's kind of like being in the capital program. Just because you're in the capital program doesn't mean you're funded.
Yeah.
It means you're able to compete with all the other
And
projects.
so we don't know if this would be affected by any infrastructure.
Correct.
Huge money,
Yeah.
which is possible.
Right, it's certainly possible, and I think that the path to that is probably gonna be more likely to be a grant program than something through the TIP. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't
Oh,
go after it, I think we should,
Oh, you don't think that?
but it's such a slow process of programming federal transportation dollars, it takes years.
Yep.
Um,
and the sidewalks have been put in there before and just,
Yeah, we don't have any engineering plans, we don't have any
Yeah,
cost
yeah,
estimates, I mean, it's
okay.
and they're not, there's no funding for that. And that's the suggestion we made to water, if we have these, backlog of needs of main replacements, let's do the engineering, so we have a real project with a real price tag.
Yeah.
Because the feds aren't gonna, or the state's not gonna come in and engineer our project for us,
Yeah.
we have to do that.
right. Well, I mean, that being the case, I mean, the Middle Street Bridge is the only thing that has the design work done. So is anything else even a realistic?
I don't think it's real. I don't think it's gonna. I don't think there's any downside in sending, a list of 3 or 4. I wouldn't want to go much past that because it's, you want to at least like,
Be realistic.
yeah, you need to know your audience.
Yeah.
I don't see any harm in putting in a list of 3 or 4 projects, but I think realistically, the only one that's going to be even potentially competitive is probably the bridge
But the money wouldn't become available
for many years.
until well after our other sources of grant are no longer available.
That's right.
Have turned into pumpkins.
Yep. Yeah. But if it was on the tip, at least if there's new money, actually, this is a good example. So and actually a potentially analogous situation. So in Westford, when I was working there, it was shortly after the big recession. And the town had permitted a 1 million square foot industrial park, and the developer had to rebuild 3 intersections in order to meet the conditions of their permit. And that was originally going to happen over the course of 15 or 20 years as the park built out. And so the developer went and designed all the intersections. So they had, design plans for each of these. Then along comes the ARA money, the stimulus under Obama. And so everyone was all excited, maybe we can get these done sooner. Well, one of the strings attached to the ARA money was, in order to be eligible for the ARA money, you had to be on the tip. Well, that region hastily rewrote their tip to add these intersections, and these 3 intersections, signalized intersections, you know, probably $2 million worth of work, got paid by the federal government. But they had to go through all kinds of, like, you know, they had to be on the tip. So there's a value in getting on the tip, because like you said, Archie, you know, a new, you know, some big federal stimulus comes along, and if they put it in there that in order to be eligible, you have to be on the tip, and you're not, you're out of luck, you know. So, I mean, Westford was able to get that done, but they had 1 million square feet of industrial and commercial development that caught the state's attention.
Yeah.
So we don't have that.
Yeah, okay. So, all right, that being the case, and, you know, you're suggesting that it doesn't hurt to put,
Yeah, no, I don't.
hurt to putting those projects in.
I mean, what I listed is pretty much exactly what we've put in each of the couple of years I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
We need to make a motion that we're going to do that.
I think that'd be great. Yeah.
Anybody wanna make a motion?
I'm not on the page. 45.
I was going to line you that day.
Oh.
Make a motion that we add the following projects to the MVMPO's draft fiscal year 20 to 22 to 26 TIP for West Newbury, the reconstruction of the Middle Street Bridge, Route 113 reconstruction from Page to Pentucket. Third item, sidewalks, crosswalks, and pedestrian safety improvements on Route 113, especially near the schools. And finally, Main Street, South Street, Moulton Street intersection improvements.
Second. All in favor? Discussion? All in favor? All right. Mass Department of Fisheries and Wildlife sent a letter regarding updated draft priority habitat maps that are currently open for public comment. I actually tried to open those off the PDF, and the links. Sometimes the links work in the PDF, and sometimes
they only work in the PDF if I manually put in the link, which I do.
Okay.
Yeah, once you scan it, it does, unless you do the optical character recognition, which I don't.
Yeah.
So like the link on the agenda, I go in after I scan it and manually put in that.
Okay.
So I don't go through
It
and do
just
that.
looks like it's an underlined.
Yeah.
Or it actually, in some of them, they look like they were links. They were highlighted like they were links, but they weren't.
If I convert a Word document to a PDF, it preserves the link.
Okay.
But if you scan a document, it's an image file, and there's
Right. Now that makes sense. Yeah.
Put it in.
Have you looked at this map?
No, I have
haven't
not.
looked. I'd just be curious if it changed anything in West Newbury.
I have
So
not.
I'll take a look tomorrow.
So the public comment period began May 3rd. It ends on July 3rd. So as you see, it was sent to the planning board, Concom, and building inspector. So, you know, maybe we could put this in for the June 28th, in case this.
But I mean, I don't even know how I would have any knowledge to even comment on that.
Well, if there, like, for example, if there's a new endangered habitat species area that didn't used to be in West Newbury, it could impact conservation.
Oh, I understand that, but me personally, I wouldn't have any knowledge on how to even comment on it. If it makes sense or doesn't make any sense, I wouldn't know.
You haven't seen any endangered turtles out walk any runs around the reservoir?
Yeah, but I'm not qualified to comment on this, I don't think.
Yeah. All right.
It's just informational.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to be aware.
Yeah, I will try, I got to the links in the PDF and I didn't even go back and look to see if I had them there. I see that there is a URL shown there, so I should have just typed in the URL.
So would we be looking for comments from these boards or just leave it up to each individual board to reply? If they want?
Yeah, no, it's PFW that's
Yeah.
looking for comments. I mean,
Alright.
saying we could, make our constituents aware, we could certainly post something on social media, say, hey, these maps are available for public comment, no harm in doing that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take a look at that,
I
out
will
of
too.
curiosity. The next item is to confirm our summer schedule.
Oh, we should talk about the need for an extra meeting.
Right.
Archie missed that part of the earlier discussions.
For what?
Union negotiations.
So it would be an executive session meeting. We ran out of time. Plus, we didn't want to really do anything without your comments. So,
Okay.
Probably try to add something in the next 8 or 9 days.
Okay.
So what do our schedules look like for the next few days?
Archie, I know Tuesdays are a bad day for you, right? Generally.
No, because of COVID, I'm leaving work at like 5 or 6 rather than 7 or 8. So better.
Angus, you had mentioned the second, I think, is a possibility, and
Second's a possibility.
yeah, I think
I could do the first but I would want to be done by like 6:45. So that, I don't know if that gives us enough time on next Tuesday.
And how about next Thursday?
That does not work for me.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Although again, if we finished by like 6:30, I could do something early evening, even on Thursday. Actually, wait, no, the third, no, I couldn't. This Thursday.
I do remember what my conflict was on Tuesday. Yeah.
I mean, maybe let's focus on this and then we'll circulate dates for what we can
Okay.
do in the near term.
Okay.
and just-
But yeah, we do want to try to. do
But
it pretty
let's
soon.
decide,
Pick a date, yeah.
let's decide now. As well. In the next week is what you're saying.
Week and a half.
Okay, what's wrong with the second?
I have a conflict, I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing, like with the other nights. We did it early enough, I could do it, but,
Would a Friday afternoon work for people?
would work for me.
Wendy, what time do you get home Fridays?
Selling yet?
I mean, I could do 4:30.
Let's push it.
Yeah.
Birthday dinner.
Get out of work too. And 3 weeks later.
2 weeks later.
What's that?
My birthday dinner with my wife's that night, which has already been bumped a couple of times.
Oh,
so
yeah, do that.
It's already a couple of weeks late, so.
What was that? 40?
46. I turned 46 recently.
You're young dude.
Is there any possibility of like early evening on the 1st, like 5 to 6:30?
Yeah, maybe.
I can do that.
Yeah.
That would work for me.
Okay.
Let's pencil that in. 5 to 6:30.
So the school building committee, what are they like the
The
first?
second. I think that's the second. Sorry, I'm having calendar problems.
Did anybody have any other, the other dates work okay? Wendy?
Yep.
Archie? The other dates that are on here?
I'm not thrilled about the day after Labor Day. Just, are we, that means Angus has to be like getting the packet ready for the Labor Day weekend and just the preparation. I don't know, just the day after Labor Day seems like a bad day.
I think he was the one that suggested it.
I did, but I mean, just yeah, it kind of sets in motion the whole fall, and with the fall town meeting presumably being in October, we need to be closing in on like what's the warrant going to look like.
Well, why don't we do a Wednesday? Just like,
That doesn't really buy us anything with packet prep because it's still going to need to be posted by the prior Friday. Because the holiday doesn't count for the 48 hours.
no, but it gives you one more day on that. Yeah.
Not really though, because it's the prior Friday Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday, it's still.
I was trying to figure out just how hard your tongue was stuffed in your cheek when you said, always good to start the fall with a meeting right now.
I actually meant it. I don't know. I'm accustomed to like Labor Day, it's like you're into the fall.
Fun is over.
I can tell you, we've got the annual audit scheduled for the week of the 13th, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
want to meet.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
brutal, which by the way, is about 5 weeks earlier, which is great, but for my office to be ready, we're already preparing for audit, and some of the things we have to do with OPEB and a whole bunch of stuff. So that week of the 13th is like lockdown. That's
Okay, that's fine.
so I really do. I mean, whether it's the 7th or the 8th, I do think that week of Labor Day does tend to be pretty important.
Yeah.
With an eye toward like the warrant, and if we need to have a free cash transfer to get the tax rate where we wanted, all of those things that early September ends up being a
Yeah.
pretty key time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine with that if everybody else is.
And I mean, my vacation week's gonna be the 16th, the week of the 16th, so, you know, I might take a little other time, but I don't foresee any problem having a agenda and pack it out ahead of Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
It's kind of satisfying to hit send on that packet. Not so much when I'm hitting it Saturday, but if I can leave the office Friday and hit send, have a nice long weekend ahead of me.
See,
that's fine.
I was
It's like,
telling
it's
Angus,
as good as it gets.
can we cut down on paper?
Oh, yeah, does everyone need printed copies or is the electronic packet sufficient?
For quite a while, I was working strictly with the electronic. I was mostly reading it on the laptop, and then lately I've gotten back into it. But I can shift back to reading it as soon as I had the paper. I found it was easier to make notes.
I needed the paper when I was doing the chairman thing on Zoom. It was too hard to like look at the monitor and try to then look at the. I needed something. I needed a physical copy because otherwise you need two laptops running.
Yeah, right.
But with a real meeting, I find I can do it all. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
It's one more thing for Angus to have to do.
Yeah.
I'm not forcing it on you.
Yeah,
Just a suggestion.
No, I've thought about it a lot, and I'm just finding, of course, this is, you know, my first full meeting as chair, so at this point, I'm comfortable having paper, hard copy.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
But I guess if the day comes that any of you don't want it, or it's just sitting there, let me know.
No, it would be great to cut it out.
Yeah.
If we don't need it.
And, you know, ideally we'll get to a point where
Not to mention
packets are.
print cartridges.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, no, we burnt, and Michael attests to, we are going through a lot. more
Especially when
paper
you've got the like
that's-
maps and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ideally, we'll get to a point where packets are done Friday morning, and then there's support staff who can print them, but that's not the reality.
Yeah.
you know, nowadays. So but I have no problem, you know, printing paper.
But I definitely don't want you coming in on a Saturday just for the sake of printing a copy for me.
That's good to know.
That's
I'll
a
keep that
terrible,
in mind.
no, you should, you know, that's a terrible way to ruin your Saturday.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, the only note that I need to make is that I will not be present here on August 9th. And Archie, we talked about that really
Yeah.
briefly. That
I'll be here then.
Yeah, so
I
Archie,
won't be here on the July. That says.
the 12th, right, yeah.
I may not even be able to do the Zoom at that point either.
Do we want to look at a different?
I won't be
date in
Zoom, yeah,
July?
I plan to be, you know, here virtually, but I can't be here physically.
Archie, is there a different date in July? July, should we aim for? Or is that?
Well, just that, the week of the 12th, I can't promise that I would be able to get to them. If things go well, yeah, but you never know. I don't know whether I can get to can do it virtually on that week. And but that's okay. Leave it. That's all right.
Okay, and so we were sticking, and we were also sticking with September 7th.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wendy?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right.
Okay, we ready for moving on? So,
Yeah.
all right, it's, you know, obviously it's kind of late. I don't want to I'll go into as much detail as you want, but this section of the agenda is primarily just to let you know some of the other things going on. Happy to answer any questions or talk about anything, but the guardrail Farm Lane, that's brand new. Wayne looked at it. He thinks it's warranted. I got a chance to drive out there myself. I agree. We ought to be.
Why is it, I mean, having lived right next to that for 20 years, why is it worse now than it ever?
A lot of trees came out.
Yeah, but so what?
Maybe it's like a visual deterrent or something.
The slope has always been is terrible. Yeah. In other words,
Have they dug it out deeper below, or was it the grade at that level? I mean, it's
the
gotta be.
grade was horrible there always.
Yeah,
You could
okay.
barely walk up it.
Yeah, because it's got to be a good 30 feet down to.
As you go further down,
Yeah.
towards the burger bushes,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wondered why is this a problem in search of a solution? The solution in search of a problem. It just seems like it's okay. There's a fewer trees, but the slope there was always very, very dangerous. I don't know. I suppose the tree, if you were careening down the thing, you'd run into the tree instead of.
How did this get initiated?
A resident contacted us with a concern.
From Farm Lane or
No,
just nearby? Or not at all? Okay.
and I referred it to Wayne, and he took a look and felt it was a valid concern, and felt that it was exacerbated by the removal of trees.
Yeah.
And that's why we started to think of maybe it was a school building related cost. I don't know that they're going to agree with that.
Probably pretty good chance they won't.
Well, but this is where it's important to know where the board stands,
Yeah.
because if we feel, and I'm not sure we do collectively, but if we did feel that it was caused by that project, then I think there's a stronger basis to assert that the project should bear the cost rather than our taxpayers.
Well, we're also part of the.
Well, yeah, but that's a proportional share rather than the full.
Yeah. I mean, we're the host community, but we should be taken advantage of because we're the host community.
So it's a new issue. You can, this just.
I'm just giving, but what do you?
We
What do
can.
you-
Well,
what
quite
do you
honestly,
guys
I had never really thought about it before, because I guess, I mean, I've driven down Farm Lane, probably 20 times the whole time I've lived in town. I don't really have much reason to go down that way. But when I drove by it recently and looked at it and thought about it, said, yeah, if this were and it's not a state highway, or, if it was a significant roadway, something like that would definitely be protected, because it's a really steep bank and it drops for, got to drop 30 feet at least.
Right.
And
But nobody goes down that road. Because Farm Lane is Chestnut Street is a loop.
Yeah.
So even if you lived on Chestnut Street, you could go the other way to get to your house. You wouldn't even need to go down there. So basically, the only people that really positively need to go down there are the Perkins family. Yeah. There's no other houses down that road. I don't know. Just saying, it doesn't. That section of the road does not really need to get much traffic.
Well, there's these 5 houses that are on it, right?
Mostly, they're
Yeah, I think your access is
their
actually off of this
entrances
right here,
are all.
because this is a very steep. I think this is a
Right.
really.
Their entrances are all this road, the front of their houses. There's no driveways up that way.
Isn't this a road as well?
Yeah, but that road comes around like this. It's a circle, so you don't even have. They could, if they were terrified of going down there, they could just do that.
I don't know, from my days when I used to sit out here waiting for my kids after school, there are plenty of kids with cars that go up and down that road.
It used to be lined with
Yeah,
cars.
but
with
not
kids
all,
parking.
not that far down.
I haven't driven down there to take a look. I mean, do you need an answer tonight? Or?
No, not at all. Just making you aware it came
Yeah.
up. And I mean, I think if we as a community come to think that this is a need, then, you know, was it caused by the school project? And if so, do we assert, you know, how much do we assert that? If it wasn't, or even if it was, but they declined to support it, then, you know, do we put it on a capital program and it fights against, you know, fights with all the other competing
Yeah.
needs for funding through capital?
I was just surprised at the cost of it, and this is just guardrails the
Yeah.
whole length.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is the subsurface
Yeah.
and what they, you know, I guess it's just they embed, it's got to go in so deep and with concrete and things like, it adds up.
I like the bureaucraties of what they call the guardrail.
Oh, yeah. Right. Travel lane departure and so,
Yeah.
That's a new one for me.
that was a Wayne humor.
$10 per linear foot.
Yeah.
Which, you know, if you
Actually,
think about-
$100.
Oh, was it
Yeah,
$100?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
$100.
$100 per linear foot, so. Design, permitting, construction. Yeah. Anyhow, so, next one, just, yeah, we had the interviews last week with the tree designers for the playgrounds, inviting public comments, through the end of the month. We have a designer selection working group. Ultimately, it's Mike McCarron as the chief procurement officer, who makes the decision, but we're getting public input. Wayne's very involved. And the main point here is that selecting the designer is not selecting the design. That's the main point we're trying to get out, is once the designer is selected, their concept is the starting point to then finalize the design through another public process with another publicly televised meeting. So, but we have three highly qualified vendors, so that's a good thing. Middle Street Bridge, I included a bunch of information, a lot of which I hadn't looked at before. You know, it came in right as we were kind of finalizing the packet and agenda, so it's probably more than you need on the full detail and engineering, but we
Yeah, but what's it all mean? I read it, but I didn't get anything. What's it all mean?
They're just design modifications in response to the Conservation Commission hearing. Not significant. Well, I don't think it's significant. I'm asking to have a qualified scientist on site during the work and some additional stormwater retention, stormwater treatment.
Oh, okay. I did
Yeah.
read about having the person there. That seems like really expensive having someone there.
Yeah.
For the entire.
Oh, yeah, they can't, that was, I thought that was a silly requirement at the outset. I think that was by the report Concom, suggesting that somebody be present.
I think West Newbury did as well. It was discussed at the sidewalk in both towns. I felt like they should.
Certainly to be there at some point, but not
Yeah,
the
but
whole time.
entire time. Yeah.
It was actually kind of interesting looking at the design and, you know, it was, you know, just the design detail was kind of interesting, you know.
Did you reach out to the BNC or BSC about?
I did.
You did?
Yep, yeah, they're working up a proposal for us. We had a call with the engineer, and he walked us through and basically, you know, reminded us about the conversations we had early on about what led to the initial decision on design, which came out of the public meeting in the fall of 2019. And you know, he's much more articulate about this than I am, but a lot of it comes down to three things: the fact that design life's going to need to be 75 years. You need a it's got to be approved by Mass DOT, and it's got to be a structural engineer has to put their stamp on the design. So when you talk about a repair of a build of a bridge, that there are no as-built plans, there's no engineering plans for what was built in the first place. All that exists, to anyone's knowledge, is a single photograph of kind of the laying of the capstone back when it was built. In order for a structural engineer to put their stamp on it, that this is going to support the loads it has to support and have a design life of 75 years, he described they're going to need to basically peel back the asphalt, look at what's there, move stones to understand what's there, which could very well trigger it to fall in on itself and become a much bigger problem than you have right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I don't want to speak for him. He's a structural engineer. That's what he does. But when you walk through it and you put yourself in a position of a structural engineer who's got to put their professional licensure on the line to stamp that this will support these loads for the design life that's required, it kind of makes sense. And he said, could it be repaired? Of course, anything could be repaired, but it would basically be like stone by stone, and it's going to be a lot more costly than what we're talking about here. But, we asked him I would like to think a concise 2 to 3 page memo, basically telling in writing what he told us verbally, would at least advance the conversation, and people could poke and prod on that and agree or not agree, but at least understand why they're saying that. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but it's a major firm. He said he can't just write a memo like that. That's got to go through internal reviews in his company, and the senior people have to sign off on that because they're so concerned about liability. So I said, I think what I'm hearing is maybe like 8 hours of billable time, like get us a proposal. And if it looks like we want to do it, if he comes back with something that says it's going to be $12,000 to $15,000 to do this, like that's, anyhow, I'll share with you what we learned, but I asked if we could have something by the 14th. He said, no way. They're totally out.
No, but Angus, so
they said
he's
that
saying,
the 28th is the target, is to at least get us something to respond to.
but he's saying it's why are we making them do something that he's saying is impossible?
You tell me. I mean, I think it's because at the end of the day, there's been meetings and conversations that staff members have been part of going back years on this, including the meeting I mentioned at DOT in Arlington, 2 years ago, where we've all been kind of sufficiently satisfied that this is a non-starter. But out in the broader community, there's not a piece of paper I can.
No,
that's why.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so that, and then people can disagree or not, but at least they can have something to point to, rather than me or Wayne trying to cobble together years worth of records and meeting minutes and email threads. And if someone reads all that, I think they'll come to the same conclusion we're at. But we don't have.
You wouldn't think there'd be any liability for them to say, or these 7.
I don't know if I don't think it's a liability in terms of getting sued. I think it's a matter of its professional reputation and his firm's reputation. And for him to write a memo like that on their letterhead, it's got to go through layers of review.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I said, if we're talking 8 or 10 hours, fine, great. We'll do a separate scope. We'll pay you for your time. But if it's something where it's a bigger effort, then I think we need to look at whether that's money well spent. I do think, since we're on the topic, it's worth pointing out, as far as the bridge and the discussion on Saturday, needless to say, the decision to make this into like a pedestrian or cycling only bridge is not a small deal. It's not something the grant that we have would cover. I mean, it really is back to square one. It's not.
In fact, we'd be paying money back.
I'm not sure. I don't know if the grant terms provide for reimbursement, but we'd certainly be giving up any right to continue to use that state money. And we have not budgeted a single dime of local dollars toward this project. So even to design a bridge like that, we'd need to be going back to the voters for a 6-figure, amount just to design a pedestrian bridge. That's just, so it's, I thought some of the comments were a little bit kind of oversimplifying that. And the other thing that we need to remind ourselves, I thought it was terrific that Leanne Delp stood up and said what she said, because in Newburyport's grant application to get the $500,000 and our grant application to get the $1 million, we emphasized the importance of this route for public safety reasons.
Yeah.
So to turn around 3 years later and say, oh, really, we didn't actually mean that. Did we or didn't we? Yeah. Like, is it important or isn't it? Because we as a community, wrote grant applications saying that it is important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is good that Leanne spoke up.
Soldiers and sailors, we're still on track. I talked to Lynn recently. She's waiting on some things from her sub vendors, but we expect the project to go out for bid in hopefully June, with bids received in July, and hopefully be in a position to award a construction contract in August. Needless to say, if the bids come in above budget, that's a whole different situation. But if there's at least one responsive bid within budget, that's still the timeline that we've had since we signed the contract last winter, and we're still on track with that timeline. And she believes that would allow, if a construction contract was awarded in August, she believes that would allow the work to get done this calendar year. We'll see.
That seems.
It does seem kind of, because it's not like whoever's bidding on it is like sitting there with nothing else to do. They've got their own, so that does seem a little bit optimistic. Job posting, the assistant town clerk, we'll put that out. We'll put that on the website tomorrow and get that out through MMA and the newspaper. But that's a big opportunity. It's going to be a great thing for this town to have. We've just had 16 hours a week budgeted in that position for all these years, and since the former incumbent retired in January, we've just had 8 hours a week in that position. So to go from 16 to 32, it's just going to really be a big help. So
yeah, I hope that that will pull a lot of load, or not a lot, but some of the load off.
It'll help deal with some of the stuff that right now we're having to scramble to do, things that really we shouldn't be we should be staffed to do things like committee appointments. Like, we should be staffed properly to do that. We're not. Yeah. We will be. So that's a plus, but the little stuff shouldn't be constantly throwing us off, but it is, because there's not enough people.
Yeah, no, that'll be good. That's been a long time coming.
And I especially think with the public, with the building opening to the public and the amount of foot traffic, that's going to be so important, so that Mike's not constantly jumping up from his desk to issue dog licenses.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an adjustment, because I'm sure the staff has been used to a certain amount of ability to focus on what they're working on.
It's going to be a huge problem. Yeah. Because the thing to understand, that I know you guys understand, but certainly in the finance department, and obviously Board of Health, their workload's gone orders of magnitude to what it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Finance department, it's not orders of magnitude, but it's a huge additional amount of work with the CARES Act, the FEMA filings, the intermunicipal reimbursements with the regional clinics, all the accounting, all the reporting and scanning, and that's a huge amount of additional work. So it's not like we're dealing with pre-COVID workload. We're dealing with more work, and the walk-in traffic, especially with our new treasure collector. I'm very concerned about how I think we're going to be ground to a halt. We'll get through it because we have a budget that gives us some more support. And once those people are trained and in their desks, I think we're going to be fine. But the month of June and July, I think it's going to be very, very tough. And we found a whole new issue today. So there's a lot that was not handled properly at that desk for a long time. And when you're being, someone's at your desk to give a payment, like you just can't. It takes hours to reconcile these bank statements of like focused time, and with there's no backup to that treasurer collector. There's nobody whose job it is to help that position. It's nuts. And that's why when you read the management letters from the audits, like it's a lot of things haven't been, anyhow, we're catching up.
Yeah, it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
I think that's it.
So I just had one comment on your list
Yep.
of things you're working on. We
Yep.
had talked about the inclusionary housing, like
Yes.
the public listening session.
Yep. Oh, yeah,
Can
yeah.
you add that to it? Or,
Yeah, I think I had that penciled in on a future board agenda. We could do it as a standalone meeting. I do think it needs, if it's on an agenda, yeah, I have it on right now penciled in for the 14th.
okay.
I think let's give it a shot and let's really try to carve out a good amount of time so we can really, if as that agenda gets closer, if it looks like that's going to be shoehorned in, then I think we should do a standalone because it's a big. It's
So I missed that, Wendy.
the housing, the whole kind of inviting public discussion of the general topic of housing policy.
Okay.
We talked about that at the last meeting. Is it maybe a way to kind of just like set the stage and everybody on the same page again about what it actually means, that inclusion in housing?
Okay, good. So by the 14th, will we have feedback from the consultant?
We don't need anything really, because the consultant is just helping us with the day-to-day.
But was there any deliverable that I understood he was kind of, they are going to kind of assess what we have currently but
just for compliance with the LIP program.
Okay.
They're just helping us with the administrative aspects of
Yeah.
the policy, not the
Okay.
strategic. There is part of their scope to look at housing trust
Okay.
as a, but what I said at the last meeting, before I worked here, I was hired by towns to do that.
Yeah.
Like I really know.
But you don't have the time to do it.
No, but it's in my head. I've got my presentations written. I've given it to the CPC.
Yeah.
And I think, my thought is present that information, have an open discussion, and then see where we want to go. But I don't think we need a work product from the consultant on that. They're helping to make sure that for the 13 units that we've added through this local initiative program, that we're doing everything we need to do.
So we don't lose them.
We're not going to lose them.
Just there's so many regulatory.
Yeah, I mean, there's an annual certification that should have been happening. They're ownership units, so it's not as big a deal because when they are sold, we're given notice. The biggest concern was that if something was up for sale and we couldn't move quick enough, we could lose one, and thankfully that hasn't happened. So, and now that we have someone under contract, that won't happen.
Right.
But I think if this town wants to, really do something, about housing, do we want to make public land available for housing development, for instance? Those are.
Well, I think, there was a general sense that the trust was going to be established and, I think we're still a ways away from doing that.
I think that's right.
So, but I think we should at least chart a course to get there, and engage those people that are interested in it. I'm not sure having it be an agenda item on a regular meeting is going to work, just because, I mean, here we are at 10:30.
Yeah. Who will staff the trust? That's the question I keep asking.
Right. But if you have this presentation prepared, could we set a public meeting just to have that presented to those people that are
Yeah.
interested and
Yeah.
without creating an undue burden on you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a handful of people, I don't know how many, but there are a handful of people, I could identify, 2 or 3 at least right off the top, that are, have expressed considerable interest.
So when would that meeting fall? I mean, now I can't find our schedule. I think we were talking about June at the last meeting, but that, I'm not sure that's going to be practical. Where's the schedule? And so we had June 14th and 28th. Probably sometime in July is more reasonable, right?
Probably, but then people will say you're having it in the summer when no one's around.
Okay. And when is the audit? You said June?
No, September 13th, the week of September 13th.
Oh, right. So June 21st, maybe?
I mean, it's kind of starting to defeat the purpose of having. I just. That's so enough.
Well, I mean, I guess the alternative is that item C in the scope for the inclusionary housing contract with the time and materials to do this. I mean, can we just have them do it?
In my opinion, to invite someone in who has no knowledge of the town and hasn't even developed any. I mean, we just signed a contract, a week ago, and it's a very kind of objective. The initial part is a very administrative nuts and bolts thing.
Yeah.
It's nothing about getting to know this town. I can tell you my biggest concern, I know Leah feels the same way, is if this town goes and establishes a trust without knowing what it takes to run and administer a trust, because it's going to create a whole bunch of work and there's nobody on staff who's able to do the work. And that's part of what I think the educational piece is. Why is it a lot of work? What does it take to set up a trust and to run it? You're effectively a grant making entity. So I think, if
It's sort of like a bank.
you are very much, you're accountable for how the money's spent, getting the receipts and, documentation. So it's kind of like, and I guess it's kind of analogous to the CPA, where there's an 8-hour-a-week position for that. But even then, once the CPA recommends a project to town meeting and town meeting approves it, their role is done. They're kept apprised of things, but they don't have any administrative responsibility to oversee how that's spent. They've chosen to in this town, but if you read the DOR guidance, that's not actually their role. Whereas a housing trust is, in fact, accountable for every dollar. So like if you're awarding funds to a private entity, entering into contracts and having reporting and someone to administer that it's a big deal. It's not a small deal, it's a big deal. And it's got to be someone's job, and that someone has to be, there's no one right now.
Well, so can't the trust pay for administrative support, a separate position? I mean, I think that's how it has to happen.
I think it's right. Yeah, you could fund it out of the CPC housing bucket initially. But I don't think that's like an easy sell at town meeting until people understand what it takes to set it up and to run it, and what are they going to get as a result of it. And that's, you know, we can talk about that, but you know, maybe they get a couple of housing units, and that's great, but that's not going to get any protection for 40B.
Oh, right.
So that's where people just, you know, we need to talk about is the housing policy to create some units that wouldn't otherwise exist, or is it to try to get out from under 40B? Which will never happen.
Yeah, well,
Which will only happen if the town accepts a fairly large scale rental development. That's the only way that you will get out from under 40B. And I can say that because I've been at this 20 years, and I can say that with conviction, but I wouldn't expect people to just believe me. But if we take the time to walk through it, people will see the math and they will understand that that's actually correct.
So once again, similar to sort of analogous to trying to get volunteers for different positions, how do you get people's attention to get get enough people to attend?
From which to draw a volunteer pool.
Or from this case, from which to draw the conclusion, understanding, you know, how
basically there's no easy answers.
Yeah,
that's
right.
really the main thing, is because people will get on Facebook and they'll put out easy answers, and I promise you there's no easy answers.
Right.
There's just not. Right. And so my thought would be you invite those individuals, those 10 or 12 people who you know to be interested, and you pick a date that they can be there and they will be there, and you have like a roundtable discussion, whether it's a formal public meeting or whether it's a, you know, a meeting open to the public like we did with the playground interviews. We're open. It wasn't a public meeting. There wasn't a public body there, but it was widely promoted. It was viewable by anyone real time and after the fact. You know, that might be just as effective. But that would be my goal, is that people have a baseline of understanding of Massachusetts housing policy, and then decide, you know, how do they want to move forward.
I think it's time we're going to adjourn, but the last thing I guess is I guess we talked about the idea of a you know, call it a retreat, you know, a meeting to sort of focus on planning type stuff, you know, prioritizing issues. And I don't know if we want to try to come up with a date now, or you know, we're not going to meet again until the 14th. So.
Well, we're meeting on the 1st, right?
Yeah.
It's just a scheduling issue to have to be added to that.
That would work. I mean, I would have no problem with it. I just don't know if that would need to be open session.
I mean, I guess, you know, you've got this.
Yeah.
If there's anything on here you do not think should be on here, let me know.
Okay.
But I could tell you if I have, you know, what?
What, December 27th? Now I have to go look.
Okay. And yeah, there's you know, a solid month of work or more here, a lot of which has to get done for the end of the fiscal year, and this doesn't even get into committee reappointments and board meeting packets and day-to-day stuff. There's a huge backlog. So, so I guess I would say, if there's anything that's optional that I'm working on that you don't think I should be working on, by all means, tell me. A lot of the stuff isn't optional.
Okay.
Yeah.
What topics?
Well, and you know, until we get, you know, we're working to get this backup finance person. You know, it's And so we made an offer last week. We had an interview 2 weeks ago. We just need to come up with a letter agreement. She'll start next Tuesday. That's going to be a little bit of help. But, you know, we got to get the assistant town clerk position advertised so we can start interviewing for that. You know, getting staffing in so we cannot be under duress every hour of every day would be a pretty good start. So we're not working till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, not working, you know, every weekend. That'd be a pretty good start. We're not there yet, as you know.
But let's get the lease done for Learning Tree.
That's in process.
So easy to do. I mean,
Well, it's not quite, while we're on the topic, so, you know, she'd like the lawn mowed more often. I met with Wayne, he'd like to give them a lawn mower and have them be responsible for mowing. That's
interesting.
the
Okay.
negotiating point there. None of this stuff's simple, Archie. You know this.
Yeah. Okay. I have one item I'd like for a future discussion. It's very persnickety, very small, but I've had other residents mention it to me also. I hate the electronic signs that move around. I just think we're overusing.
Which ones move?
Well, now it's down by the entrance to West Newbury.
Oh, those portable signs.
Yes.
I don't know what you mean.
The ones you
The
tell.
electronic signs that, you know, that are on trailers with the wheel.
They don't have a radar gun, they're just
They're informational.
Oh, okay.
And where is one now? I don't even know.
There was one set up at the near the city line. Just
Talking about watering ban or something, or?
But right next to it, literally 6 inches away is a sandwich board sign saying exactly the same thing. I don't know. I just find them. We have an electronic sign. I just find them so. When we really need it, okay, but I don't want it to become a habit. We'll talk about. I just want to do it on a future agenda.
I think that'd be
We
great.
don't want to make it a habit to, okay, now let's put this on it and we move it to somewhere else.
Yeah.
It can't be used every week, that's all.
No, it should be.
There's 2 or 3 of them. You haven't seen them?
guess not.
You can't miss it. It looks like the Mars Endeavor.
So what does it say on it?
Actually, I learned.
It just said like town meeting Saturday.
What?
I learned it from that, I don't see them.
No, there was one right on the front lawn of here. You didn't see that?
Oh, the sandwich board, I didn't see.
No,
no,
the
it's electronic.
electronic sign.
No, I don't know, Archie. I don't know what you're seeing.
Yep. You're right. No, we bought those. with
And now
Tracy.
there's another one at the other end of town.
And so
There's
is
2 of them.
DPW setting them up?
So yeah, no, I think it's great for the board to set a policy of when and how those should be used, because they were purchased with CARES money. They are intended for kind of public health reasons, and so I think that's a totally fine thing to say. You only want them used for those purposes. I think that's fine. That's great.
You're trying to protect yourself from being driven crazy. That's a health thing.
It's visual pollution.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're solar powered or they're battery powered. They're not the ones that have the diesel generator.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, you would,
Otherwise, if you get rid of them by it.
then you would have noticed it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, then I would have had a real issue. So we'll throw that on a future agenda.
Okay,
I move we adjourn.
second. All in favor?